welcome to the November 16th meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Here.
Here.
Hales.
Here. So good morning, everyone. Welcome. We have one council member who is absent, out of town, and another who is ill. So we're going to still conduct a council meeting because we constitute a quorum, but we can't act on emergency items. So as a result of that, we're going to, we have some things on the regular calendar that are emergency items. So we'll go ahead and have those items heard today. If you want to speak on those items, you'll still have the opportunity to do that. But we won't actually act on them until no earlier than tomorrow. And we're in hopes that Commissioner Saltzman will be recovered enough that he'll be back with us tomorrow. We'll have 4 people and we can act on emergency items because it takes 4 votes to do that. The consent agenda, you may or may not be here about a consent calendar item. Those are usually more ministerial. That I'm going to set the entire consent calendar over for tomorrow because, again, we can't act on those items, most of those items, without 4 people. So without objection, council members, that's how we're going to proceed this morning. Welcome, everyone. If you're here to speak on an item that is on our calendar this morning, please let our clerk know and she'll make sure you get a chance. If you haven't spoken here before, you need only give your name. You don't have to give your address. We follow basic rules of decorum here, which is that we don't have applause or verbal demonstrations in favor or in opposition to our fellow citizens' points of view. Polite hand gestures in favor or against are fine. We make exceptions for visiting dignitaries and students, so if you're one or more of those, you might get a round of applause. And then we generally give people 3 minutes to testify. Looking at the size of the group today and the agenda before us, I don't think we'll have any trouble doing that, but we won't have to reduce the amount of time available for you to speak. So with that, let's please take our communications items. We have 5 people signed up to speak, and we'll take 1260 first, please.
1260, request of Chet Orloff to address council regarding Forest Park.
Good morning and welcome.
Morning, members of the council. My name is Chet Orloff. I'm a former Parks Board, Parks Foundation member, and I'm testifying today with regard to the Forest Park Management Plan. In 1903, as I think you all know, John Charles Olmsted arrived in Portland and made a thorough and visionary report with many suggestions for us. It took us 100 years to realize most of them, as you know. One significant part of Olmsted's recommendation was that the West Hills of Portland become a forest preserve, what we now call Forest Park. Olmsted wrote, "A visit to these woods would afford more pleasure and satisfaction than a visit to any other sort of park. It requires the shutting off from the interior as completely as possible, all city sights and sounds, and a resolute exclusion of many exceedingly popular means of amusement," which in those days meant bicycle riding primarily. He continued, "This place of wild woodland character should be intended only for passive recreation, walking, and will afford mental refreshment which can only be derived from the quiet contemplation of natural scenery." 45 years later, Thornton T. Munger, wonderful man, truly the father of Forest Park, wrote, "This wilderness within a city is not a place for speeding. There will be requests for active recreation, but this is not the place for such active recreational uses. The feeling of an extensive, uninterrupted forest sanctuary must be preserved far from the madding crowd." And finally, in 1995, the Forest Park Natural Resources Management Plan of our city's Parks Bureau was published, clearly stating the goals for the park that harken back to the words of Olmsted. "Forest Park," it wrote, "represents an unparalleled resource where citizens can enjoy the peace, solitude, ruggedness, variety, beauty, unpredictability, and unspoiled naturalness of an urban wilderness environment, a place that maintains this wilderness quality while allowing appropriate passive, recreational, and educational use without degrading natural resources. In other words, America's premier urban ancient forests." As a former planning commissioner and design commissioner and Parks Board member, I urge you to stick to the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Chet. Okay, let's hear the next person, please. 1261.
Request of Phyllis Reynolds to address council regarding Forest Park.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Phyllis Reynolds. And first, thank you, Mayor Hales, for your comments about the election.
Thank
And now on to Forest Park. I'm here to talk about the flora and the fauna. As your two absent members know, I'm an author of 2 books about trees in Portland, and I'm heavily into trees, and I'm worried about the trees in Forest Park with biking, the tracks that will be made. And if any of you have ever hiked the Tillamook Trail between Seaside and Cannon Beach, you know what I'm talking about. No bikes are allowed there, but the bikers tear down the signs and proceed to use the trails, which makes huge ruts, given our wet climate, huge ruts in the trail. Now, this can happen very easily in Forest Park, and what happens to these ruts eventually sever the tree roots, and the trees eventually die. Now, you might say that's not many trees, but it will be a lot of trees. And think of the upkeep of those trails to get rid of those ruts, and you can't walk on trails with heavy ruts. Now to the other thing is that there's no such thing as a taproot in trees in the West. They all the roots go out just under the surface. So that's why these tire tracks can just really sever the roots. Now on to the flora, the fauna. I live close to the Forest Park. I live close to the Wildwood Trail. And I have had in the last 4 years at least 2 different bobcats on my deck. I live 3 miles from here. And I am very worried that bikers careening through Forest Park and wildlife, which it has been a wildlife corridor, we all know that wildlife, those 2 things are not compatible. And I'm very worried that the wildlife will suffer and I'll never have another bobcat on my deck. And now I'm a member of the Portland Garden Club, and you all have received a letter in September, and I just want to read a little bit of it right now. The management plan calls for passive recreational use that does not degrade natural resources and requires that trails be safe for all users. However, this habitat and many of the species it supports are threatened by the unauthorized use of trails. The Portland Garden Club supports efforts to uphold the goals of the Forest Park Natural Resources Management Plan, which states that there can be no bicycling on trails that are less than 8 feet wide. Finally, I'm old and rickety. I use a cane, but I still use the trails, and I hope to hell you keep me from being hit by a bike. Thank you.
you very much. Thanks for being here this morning. Okay, let's hear from the next person, 1262.
1262, request of George Milne to address council regarding the liability of interfacing hikers and bicycles on the trails in Forest Park.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is George Milne. I'm the president of the Federation of Western Outdoor Clubs, past president of the Trails Club of Oregon. Both of these organizations were key in the formation of Forest Park. The president of FWOC, that means who we are, was Garnett Ding Cannon. I don't know if you had a privilege of meeting him, but he was a tremendous gentleman, and several other people. My case is that they had very good intent to keep that as a quiet, passive area where people could come enjoy the peace and quiet on the trails. We've had several people in the Trails Club have been injured by bikes coming down already. One of them resulted in a broken ankle. And I brought a paper here today. The Federation meets once a year. We look at issues in different areas. I should say we involve 40 clubs in 6 states, so we travel around. But we pass resolutions, and those resolutions tell what the Federation thinks. I gave you one that deals with Forest Park, and I'm going to let it speak more for itself than me trying to sit here and stutter. But thank you for the time to talk, and I would ask that you look carefully at that resolution because it took some time to get that formed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, 1263, please.
1263, request of Barbara Dugan to address council regarding dangers to senior citizens if single-track cycling is allowed to occur on pedestrian-only trails in Forest Park.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm a retired Portland Public School teacher. I'm a native of Portland, and I also ride a bike. And I want to thank you first for your service. I know being on city council is a heavy load, lots to deal with. I'm speaking as a senior, and I hike in Forest Park for health reasons, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And I no longer feel safe there. I've been hiking in the park since I was young, and since the bikes started riding on other trails, like Leif Erikson, bikers have started riding on pedestrian-only trails. I have been injured twice and been run off the trails multiple times. One time, I fell down a steep embankment and seriously injured myself. I still have a scar from that. It's just a matter of time before someone sues the city based on this. One of the things I'm aware of is there's not signs. I don't know if they've just been stolen or they're not being put up or maintained about trails that bikes aren't supposed to be on. And that concerns me. I also know, my understanding is that enforcement by the rangers is difficult, and I am hoping that I submitted some things to you, which I hope you will read later. I made it really short, and I highlighted things, so it should take you not a lot of time, because I know you're very busy. But one of the letters is from another senior, and I could have entered a lot of letters, but I didn't want to clog up your time. But these people suggest that perhaps licensing bikes would be useful. And since the city puts quite a bit of money into safety and so forth for bikes, and they use the infrastructure, then people having a license on their bike seems to be not only provide revenue for park rangers and so forth, but I certainly am willing to pay for something like that. That's a minimal fee, but it's a way of identifying people, because I do know, I've heard in bike circles people say, well, you just don't carry your ID and then you don't get a ticket, or you give a false name, and that concerns me. I am concerned about safety, and I live near Gabriel Park right now, and when I moved there 20 years ago, there was a very serious erosion problem from bikers. And yesterday I talked to an employee in the city that's in park management, and they told me that 15 years later, after extensive rehabilitation, that there's still areas that have not rehabilitated due to the compaction and so forth, and being in an understory, and it's just been harder. And I encourage you to check with people in Gabriel Park. I'm hoping that you take into consideration that 4% of the trail users are single-track bikers, and I want you to consider that this park is for all people, and the fact that they're not complying with laws, I hope you will take that in consideration in terms of policy making and decision making in terms of recreation and preservation, and not let a small group of users dominate policy making.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, and we have one more, 1264.
Request of Alex Shea to address council regarding dangers to people with disabilities if single-track cycling is allowed to occur on pedestrian-only trails in Forest Park.
Good morning. Come on up, please. Yes. Any chair will do there. Thank you.
So my name is Alex Shea. Some of you may remember me for the work that I've done in renewable energy, but when I'm not doing work with renewable energy and when I'm not with my family, I like to escape for some of the same reasons that some of the other speakers have discussed: health reasons, emotional reasons, spiritual reasons. And when I do that, I typically go hiking in places that I can access via TriMet, and that includes Powell Butte and Forest Park. Highlighting some of the differences, Powell Butte is a place where you can hike 3 miles, whereas Forest Park is a place where you can hike 30 miles. And in September, I set myself a challenge as a blind person to independently hike up from my dog Clifton the entire Wildwood Trail from the Oregon Zoo to Northwest Newberry Road near Savi's Island. And we accomplished that goal on September 5th. Now, as a blind hiker, I face enough challenges. Trail-related impediments on the one hand, knowing where I am and where I'm going on the other. The last thing that I need are additional challenges that would prevent me from hiking safely and enjoying the hiking experience. When you encounter a bicycle on the trail, and the cyclist will have varying degrees of control. Clifton and I, we take up the whole trail because he has to walk next to me so that I can be successful. So we will have to yield for those bikes. And we may be able to yield safely and step off the trail, and we may not. We may inadvertently step off the trail off of an embankment or something that's steep or high up, and at the very least, it would be unpleasant. At the very worst, it could be, I could suffer an injury for no reason other than I had to yield for someone that has access to lots of other places, like Leif Erikson Drive, like Northwest Saltzman Road, like the Springwater Corridor. So, as my predecessors, the previous speakers have indicated, I would encourage you to please leave Forest Park for passive use, i.e. for hikers and walkers only. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Say. Appreciate you being here. Thanks very much.
Yep.
So appreciate this process that we have, and it's unusual to have 5 people on the same subject. So just a brief report back from the Bureau that's working on this. There is an important meeting coming up, which is the Project Advisory Committee meeting, which is on December 15th, and it's from 4 to 6. So obviously, it's important that you raise these issues to the council. It's also important that you continue to participate in that process. And it's our intention that, first of all, that what we're working on is a citywide document. The Off-Road Cycling Master Plan is a citywide effort, policy guidance and planning for a system, not for one park in particular. So we need to take that kind of comprehensive approach, as a couple of you suggested here, and that anything in terms of Forest Park will be grounded in both the vision and desired outcomes of that master plan, but also, as you've mentioned, of the Forest Park Natural Resource Management Plan. So we have to make sure that, again, we take a citywide view and that we take pay particular attention to master plans that have been done for specific parks or specific parts of the system. So again, this is an ongoing effort. Nobody's decided any trail issues yet, but you're right to raise them, and I hope you raise them there on the 15th. And obviously the Planning Bureau staff and Parks Bureau staff and the transportation staff that are all supporting that effort, I appreciate hearing from you as well as we do.
Do we know when that project will be furthering a recommendation to council?
I don't know that. Obviously, if we're having a project advisory committee meeting in December, it's going to be sometime next year at the earliest. But maybe somebody here knows. Oh, there she is. Good morning. Yes, you do know.
Michelle Koenig, North Project Manager. We would be bringing a proposal to City Council approximately May or June of 2017. So still plenty of time for community input.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for leading this pretty important piece of work. So thank you.
I also mentioned that one of the first things I did when I was the Parks Commissioner was to finalize a project screening tool for what mitigation would be required for anything in Forest Park when proposals come. So that would also guide any outcomes from the committee.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you all very much, and look forward to the next phases of the process. So thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the rest of our council calendar. And again, we're not going to do, if you came here late, we're not going to do consent today because we don't have four of us this morning, and we might tomorrow, so we're delaying that till tomorrow. And then there's some council calendar items that we will hear today but can't act on. But the first item on our regular agenda, item 1265, is a resolution, and we can hear and act on that today. So let's read 1265, please.
1265, accept findings of the South Portal Partnership Plan project pertaining to proposed changes to roadway alignments of Southwest Bond Avenue, Southwest Moody Avenue, Southwest Hamilton Street, Southwest Hamilton Court, Southwest Lowell Street, Southwest Thomas Street, and direct implementation of a plan to fund, design, and construct remaining South Waterfront Street connections.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, before the team begins a presentation, I want to thank our community partners who provided detailed feedback. Michael Harrison from OHSU, Alan Park from Zidell, Mr. Pasquale Pascuzzi, the South Waterfront Business Association, the South Portland Neighborhood Association, and residents of Johns Landing, South Waterfront, and Lair Hill. As the city continues to plan for the future, it's important that you all stay engaged through the process, and I'm sure that you will. Take it away, team.
Thank you, Commissioner Novick. I'm Andrew Abbey, South Portal Project Manager. Joining me today is Kurt Kruger from PBOT and Jen Bachman from DKS and Associates, who is our traffic engineer on this project. I'm going to turn it over to, I'm going to turn it over to Kurt, who's going to kind of give you the context for how South Portal came about, and then we'll move in to our presentation.
Good morning. Thank you, Andrew. Kurt Kruger with the Bureau of Transportation. My comments are going to be brief, just giving you a little history. We've had a South Waterfront Street plan in place for a number of years. We've made a few changes along the way as the district has redeveloped, and we need to make tweaks. And we're here before you today with a fairly substantial tweak to the street plan for a number of reasons. We had a project that was identified almost a decade, probably more than a decade ago, that was essentially unbillable with funds that we just didn't have. Andrew will get into those issues, but we took a new look at this area of South Waterfront when the Lake Oswego streetcar discussion was tabled. And we have been working with developers pre and post recession that have struggled with this part of the street plan because it essentially put streets through existing buildings. It had significant costs associated with them. So we went back to the drawing table and realized we could make some rather lower cost improvements to the street plan and really provide certainty to the development community that they've been looking for. They would approach me, they would have discussions with my staff, and we would have a lot of unknown questions. And from a developer standpoint, that's not good business. They need to know exactly what it is that we're going to be asking for. And I think what we have before you today is a plan that really provides certainty. It also provides the needed transportation improvements that will help this district continue to thrive and grow. So I will turn it back to Andrew, and I'll be available for questions that you may have.
Thank you, Kurt. So if we can switch to the presentation, I really want to emphasize that we went into this project with an open mind. We really went where the traffic study guided us and where public feedback guided us as well, which significantly shaped the final proposal. What is shown above here is the evolution of the South Waterfront Street Plan. You can see we've been at this for 20 years now. The South Portal project was launched in 2013, 3 years ago. We're before you today with a resolution. I want to emphasize that if you approve this resolution in and of itself does not actually update the street plan. So what council will be considering tomorrow as part of the comp plan implementation is an amendment to the TSP that would effect the changes that are contained in this resolution. So that's already in your council packet for tomorrow. The purpose of the hearing today is to take all the testimony and to air this out in detail before it's part of a much larger package that you're going to be considering tomorrow. So just to kind of recap the robust public outreach on this, we've had 10 public meetings since 2013. We have made it a real point to reach out to affected property owners in the area. I'm particularly pleased that some of our most significant refinements to the street plan have come after the second open house that we had in January of this year. So between January and November of this year, we have been busy refining the street plan to make key changes based on feedback that we received. Kurt was mentioning the cost estimate for our current street plan, a very high-level estimate. I think this is probably low, but the 2006 estimate was $50 million. If I pretty conservatively plug in 5% a year inflation, that would be $80 million today. The proposed street plan changes would reduce those costs by nearly half to a range of about $36 to $45 million. Just to put this into perspective, $80 million is equal to 9 years of citywide PBOT system development charge revenue. So in theory, if we could pay for 100% of this project, the status quo, with PBOT SDC, and we didn't spend any money anywhere else in the city, we would take 9 years worth of PBOT SDC for a single project. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jen, and she will kind of walk you through the challenges and what the details are of the proposed street plan changes.
Thanks, Andrew. I want to start just by helping everybody understand what some of the challenges and constraints of the South Portal area. And for anybody unfamiliar with that term, we're referring to the southern end of the South Waterfront area. On one side, it's constrained by a freeway. On the other, it's constrained by a river. And south of Bancroft, there are no streets that connect to the neighborhood to the south. So it's a very isolated area. There's limited access. There's been a lot of development in that area in the last several years. So growing congestion, vehicle queuing, especially trying to get in and out of the district at peak hours, and lack of multimodal connections to and from the area. So definitely pointing towards a need for improvements. And furthermore, at the beginning of this study, we looked at, what would happen 20 years out if we didn't do any improvements to the area. And the intersections down at the southern portion of that area exceed capacity significantly. So all of these point to signs that, improvements are needed in this area. Go ahead, our next slide. As Kurt and Andrew mentioned, this is not the first time that the city evaluated this area. In 2006, a street plan was adopted. That street plan definitely has some issues, as Kurt was referring to, just to get everybody a little more familiar. That street plan realigns, and in this picture, north is to the right. It realigns Hood Avenue to come in at Hamilton Street, creating a 7-lane cross-section in that area. It's building a road through steep terrain, forested, so there'd be some significant costs and risks associated with that. There's a lot of right-of-way take and certainly a long time frame to implement, partly because as Andrew was saying, the funding is so significant. Go ahead. So with that, the city wanted to take another look at that area and see if there was another option that would still benefit the area, but at a lower cost and less impactful. The project team and stakeholders identified 4 goals right off the bat that are served as our evaluation criteria. The first one is to improve vehicle access and multimodal mobility to and from the area. The second one was to provide a cost-effective solution. So cost was definitely an element that we considered. Third, minimize physical impacts. So both right-of-way takes and building in challenging terrain that might prove risky. And then meeting the needs of future development. So these goals are what the team used to move forward and evaluate different alternatives. And here's where I want to say there is no magic bullet. There's no perfect solution for this area. With the constraints that we've talked about, there's development, there's a freeway, there's a river, there's definitely elements that, limit what can be done down there. So shy of burying the freeway or doing some crazy tunnel option, which would blow the cost-effective goal out of the water. There's no perfect solution, but what we did do was we found an alternative, we're calling it the recommended alternative, that achieves these project goals and at a lower cost and that's less impactful than the currently adopted alternative. So what we're going to get into now is detailing what kind of the key components of the recommended alternative. There are three main components. The first one in the middle of this is an improvement to the Macadam Bancroft intersection. And I'll detail all of these in the next couple of slides, but these are kind of the three overarching components of the project. And then if you move north, you see an extension from Lowell Street between Moody and Macadam, which provides improved access into and out of the district. And then the third component is extending Moody Avenue south of Bancroft all the way down to Hamilton Court, providing yet another point of connectivity to the district and also connecting to the neighborhood south.
So just to remind me, sorry to interrupt, but that section of Lowell doesn't exist today, right?
Correct.
So it is a right-of-way, but it's unbuilt, or, yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes, correct. That is unbuilt today. So let me get into each of them in a little more detail. The first one that we're talking about is an improvement to the Macadam Bancroft intersection. And what we're doing here is a very simple signal phase changing and a slight change in circulation. So minimal impact, very low cost, yet significant benefit. Right now, traffic can come down Hood Avenue and enter the district at Bancroft, or turn left and continue north on Macadam. What this improvement does is it changes that circulation slightly. So traffic coming in from Hood Avenue would turn left onto Macadam instead of entering the district at Bancroft. By doing that, we eliminate a traffic signal phase and can allocate significantly more green time to the other phases as needed. So depending on time of day and whether it's ingress or egress traffic, this would definitely help address during the PM peak, the queue that builds up on Moody Avenue, being able to flush that traffic out. We'll talk a little bit more about, there'd also be a signal at Bancroft Moody that would be tied to it. We'll talk more about that.
Clarify though, does that mean that Bancroft is one way at that point?
No,
So where would the traffic going into the district come from if Hood's not allowed to go?
well, that brings me to, so if you're coming north on Macadam, you could still turn right onto Bancroft.
Okay.
It's only affecting Hood Avenue traffic.
Thank you.
So that brings me to, and this is, the next slide just kind of details that change. So you can see, and here in this slide, north is to the right, and the picture on the left is the existing configuration, on the right is the proposed configuration. The only change is that traffic from Hood Avenue now all turning left onto Macadam.
So you probably will walk us through this, sorry to interrupt you, but if I'm driving from the east side, I come across the Ross Island Bridge and I want to go by car to this district, I don't do that straight across Macadam anymore. And I would, of course, always follow the traffic laws, but if I was not going to follow the traffic laws, what's stopping me from driving straight across that intersection other than the presence of a police officer?
There would be improvements to the intersection that,
Be curbs or
Yeah.
other turning guidance?
right, you could provide guidance with improvements to prohibit that from happening.
All right, thank you. But how would I make that trip by car? Maybe you'll get to that.
Well, so that brings us to the second component, which is key, because if we're omitting that movement.
Oh, I see. That's why you've got the new street. Okay.
Yep. So if we're omitting that movement, we need to provide an adequate access for those vehicles. And right now, it would mean going all the way up to Curry, which is about a third of a mile out of direction travel, especially if they're headed for the southern end of the South Waterfront District. So by extending Lowell Street, you're now creating, you're kind of correcting the grid system, because right now there's a disjointed grid. If you go in on Thomas, that's just to the north, and it's not really adequate for that volume of traffic that would need to access the district there. So the improvement includes a northbound right turn pocket and an improved signal at the Moody-Lowell intersection. And Lowell would be two ways in this scenario. So traffic could both enter and exit. So we're improving connectivity to and from the district with this extension. It does require some right-of-way, and, Andrew can speak more to this, but he's been working diligently with the property owners in that area and really laying the path for those agreements to take place.
If you're going north on I-5, you used to be able to get off and go straight into the district, and now you have to go past and back again. Is that going to stay?
Go past the district. Yes.
You have to get off on the
Yes.
on the Hawthorne Bridge and then swing
This
around.
this does not change that. Yeah. The next slide, did you want to speak to?
Yeah, Commissioner, we had quite an extensive crash history with that right turn movement. And when I say we, I mean PBOT, NODOT. I'm not going to get into jurisdictional issues. The reality is that right turn movement coming off of I-5 north onto Macadam and then making that right turn across parallel traffic just didn't work very well. It wasn't very safe. We had, ODOT told me there were 14 angle crashes from vehicles turning right from the freeway ramp onto Curry from 2007 to 2013. And since the separator was installed, there were no reported angle crashes back in 2014. And there were a lot of near misses. I remember going out there one day, even after everything was installed, and somebody wanted to go that way anyway, and I heard a loud screech of the tires. So that's just not a safe situation that we wouldn't want to restore.
Yeah, well, thank you for providing that. I wasn't arguing, I was just wanting to understand, but it's really good to know that, and it's a good example of getting to Vision Zero, that in a very simple, low barrier, so you can't make that right turn. It's, as you said, just eliminated those crashes. That's really good to know.
But I would candidly say, Commissioner, that decision was not particularly popular. We certainly heard a lot of feedback from business owners that it's a little bit problematic when people have to kind of go out of direction to get to their businesses. So it's certainly not without trade-offs.
And it was a surprise at the time. And as you pointed out, before the barrier was there, I was like, well, I don't know how to do this, so I'm going to turn right anyway. But that was on a Sunday when it was not busy and I didn't have a crash. But I agree that we have to look at the whole safety of the whole system.
Okay, so was there anything else?
I think we've covered the Lowell Street, and then
Yeah.
you're going to go into the third change, Jen.
So the third component is extending Moody south from Bancroft all the way down to Hamilton Court, which then provides another point of connectivity to and from the district at Hamilton Court. Moody would be two ways through this section. So if you're heading northbound, you would get up to Bancroft and at that point hit the couplet and go over to Bond to continue traveling north. By doing this, the Bond Avenue extension can be removed from the proposed street plan, which cuts down the cost significantly. There'd also be a traffic signal installed at Bancroft and Moody and some slight lane configuration. And this is where, that new signal and the signal improvement at Bancroft Macadam, the signal that's at Bancroft Macadam right now is very old and could be upgraded to much newer technology with far greater capabilities. So those two could work together and help flush traffic in or out of the district as needed. Another advantage of the Moody Avenue extension is that it connects to the Johns Landing neighborhood. So now people from Johns Landing can get to the South Waterfront district without having to get on a major arterial and vice versa. In looking at this concept, we definitely played with different ideas, incorporating bike lanes, multi-purpose path. You can see the conceptual drawing on the left is one idea of incorporating the bike lane and then, having a multi-purpose path on the east side of Moody, south of Bancroft. And yeah, so this helps address the multimodal component as well. Andrew, did you want to say a few things about this?
I think the key is right now is that the bike facilities end at Bancroft Street. So it's a little bit awkward if you're riding a bike to sort of wayfind your way over to the Greenway Trail. So the Moody extension would complete that missing link, if you will, and the new signal would safely get bike traffic across Moody. And then it connects to the Greenway Trail and onto to the newly rebuilt Selwood Bridge. So we think that that would be a pretty major bike connection into the South Waterfront area.
So you can talk about streetcars and bikes a little more. So help me out with a couple issues. Right now, if you're taking a bike trip south through this area, you run alongside the streetcar tracks, as I recall, and just an asphalt section of the trail. You take a 90-degree left turn, you run down a sidewalk to the waterfront in front of the office building, and then take another 90-degree right turn to keep going south. Is that still going to be the same, or are we going to run this bikeway all the way up to where the two come back together again? You see my point? Right now, there's this weird diversion to that little section of waterfront trail. What's the ultimate plan? Is it a continuous waterfront segment and a bikeway on Moody, or?
I'm glad you asked this question. I'm really excited about this. So if you haven't been down there in the last couple of months, there is a new segment of trail that was constructed on the Bend Springs property. So that is the property just south. So that actually extends, it eliminates that 90-degree turn for segment.
Out more.
It does, and it connects to the existing trail along the Spaghetti Factory property.
Yeah.
The other exciting piece about this project is it really opens up some doors to development that's kind of stalled. So the Prometheus property, which is just north of the Spaghetti Factory, has renewed conversations with us about going through the land use process. The exciting piece there is they will be required to construct a Greenway Trail, which will connect the next segment.
Very exciting.
And two other large property owners represented here today you'll hear from are probably the Zidels and the OHSU property. We get those three properties connected and that Greenway built, we will have a Greenway Trail connecting all the way from the Selwood Bridge to downtown.
Cool. Now, what about the streetcar tracks?
So, Mayor, I just wanted to clarify, the existing tracks down there right now are not streetcar
They're
tracks,
the
they're
Willamette
actually
Shore
trolley
Trail,
tracks.
right.
I just wanted to clarify that for the record. I have a slide coming up, and I can address that question. Jen, do you have anything more to cover on this one?
No.
Okay. Perfect segue, Mayor, into the next slide.
Happy to
So this is an example of what Moody Avenue might look like, and I really want to emphasize this is a conceptual design. So what we have here is two-way vehicle and streetcar traffic, one lane in each direction, and a two-way cycle track potentially on the east side of the street, safely separated from traffic. I want to make it really, really clear that while we did have discussions with the community about the potential extension of the streetcar, this project does not contemplate the streetcar being extended further south than Hamilton Court. I will also transparently tell you, I don't recall a single person from John's Landing in support of extending the streetcar further south than Hamilton Court. Just wanted to make that really clear. However, I did hear a fair amount of interest in extending the streetcar down to Hamilton Court, just to sort of put that area within a walkshed distance, if you will, of the newly extended streetcar. Once you get south of Hamilton Court, the costs go up pretty exponentially, and then the benefits decrease. I'm not here to say that there's no possibility of the streetcar being extended. We just felt what we were trying to land on with respect to the South Portal was get to a place where it was okay to extend the streetcar to Hamilton Court and stop and call it a win and accept a terminus of the north-south line at Hamilton Court. So the one other thing I'll just add to the typical section is there actually would be in some locations center turn lanes on Moody Avenue as the right-of-way permits. And I really want to underscore that we were trying to take a real fresh approach to how we laid this out. So instead of throwing lines on a map and effectively condemning buildings, we started with the premise of what can we fit within the existing building footprint. So thanks to a $50,000 grant that we got from our good friends at ODOT, we surveyed this area, we surveyed all the existing buildings. We came up with a design that fits within the existing buildings. And I think that's really the difference between this amended street plan as opposed to what we have in the book. This is something that once we get the funding, we can, in a reasonable amount of time, actually implement.
Okay, so bringing it all back together, what this graphic represents is in blue, you see the 3 key improvements that we talked about. There's some other, accompanying elements that are highlighted in green or kind of a light orange to represent when they were added to the plan. That's the only difference between those colors. As Andrew talked about, as we went through this, we had kind of an initial recommended alternative, got a lot of feedback from open houses and stakeholders, and we're able to bring that information back and incorporate more. So that just represents the coloring difference on this so that people can see the new components that have been added. But again, combining the improvements at Macadam Bancroft with the Lowell Avenue extension and then the Moody Avenue extension achieves the 4 project goals and a much lower cost and with less impacts than the currently adopted plan.
So this is what the TSP update would look like if you approve this resolution, and then also approve amendment number, I believe it's number 41 in your council packet for tomorrow. This, in my view, is one of the most important slides of this entire presentation. I was pretty astounded to find this out, but I heard a lot of feedback from people on John's Landing about, gee, we don't have any public streets, it's really hard to get here, et cetera, et cetera. So what I did here is I sort of arbitrarily carved up this area between the Ross Island Bridge and Carolina Street into 5 polygons. So polygon number 1 at the very north end is what we know as developed South Waterfront, really robust infrastructure. Polygon number 2 between Bancroft and Hamilton Court, that's where the Moody extension would go. Polygon number 3 is Hamilton Court to Boundary Street. 4 is Boundary to Pendleton, and 5 is Pendleton to Carolina. What I found absolutely astounding was if you're driving northbound on Macadam from Lake Oswego and you pass Carolina Street, you don't get to another public street until you drive 5,506 feet, which is over a mile when you get to Bancroft Street. I mean, I was just really amazed that we had no public streets in the area. And this is really underscored by the pie chart you can see there. So the area at the very north is South Waterfront. That has 49% of the area, but it has 93% of the streets in these areas combined. If you look at polygon number 2, where the Moody Avenue extension would go, that's 13% of the area, has 7% of the streets. You get it down to polygons number 3, 4, and 5, there's absolutely no public streets. So one of the key changes of the Moody Avenue extension is that it provides some public streets access to polygon number 3. It doesn't do anything for number 4 and number 5, but at least it starts to provide some connection for area number 3. And I might also add, this is an area that has to maintain their own private water mains. There's just a lot of infrastructure areas in this issues in this area. All right, so here's my final point, and this is really just to inform council of some feedback that we got. We are not proposing to change anything right now, but I felt that based on the feedback that we got, it was important to inform council of a kind of a wayfinding issue. So one wayfinding issue that we have in this area is because we have, just jumping back to this slide, because we have virtually no public streets east of Macadam Avenue, we have certain properties that are addressed off of Macadam that aren't physically on Macadam. So the best example I can give you is the River Forum office building. You go to the River Forum office building, you have an address on Macadam, you geocode it, you drive up Macadam, you get to where you think you're supposed to be. There ain't no River Forum building there. I had a good friend of mine that had an office there many years ago. I went there multiple times, and multiple times, even though I'd been there before, I got lost going to the River Forum. But what you wind up doing is you wind up driving in and out of all the driveways off of Macadam till you, through trial and error, find where you're going. So one of the wayfinding issues that this project seeks to address is simply, if the Moody extension gets built, we would readdress those properties from Macadam to Moody. The other wayfinding issue that I wanted to get into is that as we've had more development occur in this area of southwest Portland that is east of Nato Parkway and Viewpoint Terrace, they have leading zero addresses, which, from what I understand, is unique to Portland. Part of what makes Portland weird, which is okay, but it just has some real wayfinding adverse impacts. So this is less than 1% of all the streets in the city of Portland. You see that we have 5 city quadrants. We don't have anything special with respect to that area of southwest Portland. So it's very counterintuitive. The address numbers get larger as you get closer to the river instead of further away. There's a real tendency of people to want to drop the leading zero. They think it's redundant or it's a typo or something like that. So full disclosure, I'm a former Collinsview neighborhood resident. I actually used to have a leading zero address. So
Experience.
So here's an example of what I'm talking about. You have two houses there on the right. One has an address of 16 Southwest Whitaker Street. One has an address of 016 Southwest Whitaker Street. If you forget to put in the leading zero, you wind up at the house at the top. So no problem, right? You just drive down the street till you get to the other house. Not so simple. If you look at the left there, you can see there's a freeway-style median there in the middle of Nato Parkway. You have a one-way street grid, which discourages cut-through traffic to the Ross Island Bridge. I literally went here and my car would not GPS 016 Southwest Whitaker Street. My iPhone would not GPS 016 Southwest Whitaker Street. I finally gave up and just sort of, through trial and error, tried to figure out how to get from one street to the other. So I talked to one of the owners of one of these houses. They described it as living in the Bermuda Triangle. So this is an example of how we might have a wayfinding problem in what we now know as North Portland if we had leading zeros, similar to what we have in Southwest Portland. So if we had no North Portland and we instead had all of Northeast Portland extending to St. John's, if you're going to University of Portland, you wouldn't be going to 5,000 North Willamette Boulevard, you'd be going to 5000 Northeast Willamette Boulevard. If you geocoded it wrong, you would be 100 blocks out of direction. So in theory, we would not have a leading zero issue if this area of Southwest Portland had instead been prefixed with South Portland. So again, I really want to emphasize we're not changing anything here, we're just simply informing council. What I did find out from the Fire Bureau is the 911 dispatchers do have a protocol that when somebody calls from a street that potentially could have a leading zero, there's an additional step by the 911 dispatcher to verify with somebody, do you have a leading zero or not?
Is this throughout the neighborhood?
Yeah.
Not just in
Not just South Portland, it's also Collinsview as well. So there is an additional emergency dispatching step to verify, or for example, are you at 0615 Southwest Bancroft Street and South Waterfront, or are you at 650, Lowell Street? Are you at 0615 Southwest Lowell Street in South Portland, or are you at 615 Southwest Bancroft Street on top of Markham Hill? And part of the feedback I got from a few business owners down in the area is they've had delivery drivers come in with a WB67 vehicle. They're not used to the leading zero. They punch in the other address. They wind up in some alley up on Markham Hill, and it's a little bit awkward. I wouldn't say that fixing this problem would not be the be-all, end-all in terms of freeing up capacity in South Waterfront. It's just more of a wayfinding issue.
So I noticed on the slide it says you're not actually changing that in this resolution. Is there a concept for how the process to discuss that would be? Or
what I'm trying to do at this point is I'm trying to hand this off to the Fire Bureau and get a better understanding from them how this does or does not work for them. If there were any change, it would certainly be an outreach process, and there would be council would have to approve that change, et cetera. So at this point, we're really trying to explore our options. I think one of the things, in the absence of any street changes, we're trying to get to a place where we can do a better job of doing vehicle routing. I gave you the example of my car GPS doesn't work, my iPhone doesn't work. We're trying to explore options for at least allowing these GPS apps to get people to where they need to go, which we don't have right now.
I appreciate you highlighting this issue. I think, with all due respect to the Fire Bureau, I think it has to be a joint bureau effort. I mean, PBOT has to be involved and perhaps planning, but.
And certainly neighborhood involvement.
Yeah, because it's a community decision. But you've highlighted the problem in a way I haven't seen clearly before, so that's very helpful.
Yeah, I have friends who live in the zeros, and in my defense, that was why I took the illegal right turn, because I was just afraid of getting lost in the Bermuda Triangle. So it's certainly better now that it's signposted better. But also remembering the consternation about changing 39th Avenue to Cesar Chavez Boulevard. I would think we would get some concerns from people having to redo their address, their checkbooks.
Sounds like there might be a lot of people who would actually like to change their street
might
address.
be, yes,
but,
but,
it'd be worth having that conversation.
Yes, I don't know that the neighborhoods have asked us to do this, right?
Well, I have briefed the Sweeney Transportation Committee, and I did bring this up with South Portland Neighborhood Association. I tried multiple times to just tell Collins View that we were getting these inquiries. I wasn't able to reach them. So we've just informed them. We had a good discussion at the Sweeney Transportation Committee meeting a couple months ago. I mean, frankly, Commissioner, I think this is just a question of ripping the bandage off at some point. But yes, there's absolutely would be an outreach process. I would also point out that we did an analysis. If you look at the major street renamings in Portland, Union Avenue, 39th Avenue, Portland Boulevard, in theory, if these were to change at some point in the future, it would be roughly equivalent to all of those put together. It's actually a lot smaller than you might think. It's less than 1% of the streets. Obviously a major issue to those people that live there.
But much smaller than what was called the Great Renaming, which occurred in, I think, 1916 after the city of Portland annexed St. John's, Albina, East Portland, and Sellwood, and there were all kinds of main streets and broadways, and they deputized the then city engineer, as I recall, to just fix it. And it was a simpler time.
Well, I'm just anticipating my mailbox filling up with people telling me why the zero is so revered and loved. So we'll certainly have that discussion. Thank you.
We just wanted to inform you of what the issue is. Very few people know how this really works or why it's an issue.
You've really made this clear. It's a gnarly problem, but it would involve a lot of discussion.
So, in closing, I just wanted to note, I handed to Sue, by the way, she's worked really hard this week, not only with this resolution and everything else, but I gave her a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, which you should all have a copy of. And the other thing I wanted to mention is you have a memo to council. We got 14 written comments. I took the time to attempt to sort of respond to some of the issues that were raised. I didn't characterize people as for or against. I just tried to address the substantive issues. There was a 14th piece of communication that came in this morning, which has been handed out. I would really encourage you, to the extent that you have time, to sort of read this memo between now and December 21st, when you presumably will give your final approval to the comp plan implementation, and please don't hesitate to call me if you have any questions.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I actually happened to be at the South Portland Neighborhood Association meeting quite a long time ago when this was being presented, and I was really impressed with the community outreach that you did. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Let's take public testimony, excuse me, on this item.
We have 8 signed up for testimony.
Okay.
Please come up when I call your name. First 3, Brian Newman, Sally Aldape, Justin Williams. They'll be followed by Pasquale Pascuzzi, Madeline Stasko, and Charles Johnson.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
You're on first, Brian.
Mayor Hales and Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to testify in support of the revised South Portal Plan. My name is Brian Newman. I'm Vice President of Campus Development at Oregon Health and Science University. I'm here to offer testimony in support, and I want to thank PBOT staff and their consultants for their hard work in listening to all of the diverse stakeholders and developing a proposal that will significantly improve circulation in and out of a highly constrained district. As Mr. Kruger mentioned, the South Portal was one of the original infrastructure projects identified in the South Waterfront Plan that is required to convert this former brownfield into a densely developed extension of the central city. We based our master plan in part on the road capacity and access modeled on a completed South Portal project. As you can see for yourself, we have 4 large cranes in the sky over South Waterfront today, building the next phase of our campus development, and we have worked in partnership with the city and other property owners every step of the way to align our facility investments with a phased build-out of the district's infrastructure. We have about 2,000 employees in the district right now, and that number will just about double to close to 4,000 over the next 3 years. The original South Portal project was too expensive and required too many property impacts to succeed. This revised plan is much more feasible and allows the 2 main components to be implemented in discrete phases as resources allow. Our top priority is seeing the intersection improvements and the related circulation changes to Bancroft, Hood, and Lowell Streets implemented first. The Moody Avenue extension, while important and a key part of the project, should be a later phase of work if resources aren't available to do it all at once. Once this plan is approved, OHSU will continue to stay engaged with the city staff on developing a financial plan for all aspects of the project. We look forward to the day soon when we can all celebrate the implementation of the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome.
Hi, Sally Oldape. I am here to ask you to reject the findings of the South Portal Partnership Plan. Andrew Abey says that you should accept these findings because his traffic study foretells of traffic flow improvements in the South Waterfront based on a number of proposed changes, most specifically the extension of Moody through to Hamilton Court. I do believe his plan would result in a reduction of traffic flow issues in the South Waterfront, but this plan essentially just moves the problem south, taking it off the publicly owned streets in the South Waterfront and depositing them squarely on the privately owned and maintained streets in Johns Landing, a neighborhood that clearly does not have the resources to deal with this new expected overflow. Unlike the city, Johns Landing does not get tax revenue nor development fees related to the growth, even though this community is responsible for all the related infrastructure associated with that growth. Missing from this very detailed traffic study and 4-year project summation is any statement that traffic congestion, pedestrian, and bike safety overall in the entire community is improved. Again, the study only mentions improvements in the South Waterfront. And repeatedly asked the area associations surrounding the South Waterfront for evidence of written support of his plan. We balked, asking him to provide a traffic study giving us an indication of what the traffic impact would be on Southwest Landing Drive, the road that will see the brunt of the impact. He said he would. Then later, he said he ran out of money. Last night, I received feedback from Novak's office that Andrew said that we dropped the ball, that our neighborhood should have paid for their study. This is a bit like blaming the victim. Andrew included a line in his support documentation saying that the impact to Landing Drive can be reviewed at a later date after you have voted. How convenient. I implore you to delay moving forward with this plan until you have all the data that shows you the overall impact to all the neighborhoods from this proposal, not just the positive impact to the South Waterfront, with no science whatsoever detailing the total impact to the entire community. You need to make an informed decision based on all the information, not just the information that favorably supports your short-term goal. Andrew very carefully notes that in the resolution, the area associations that he worked with to bring about consensus on this project. The SPNA repeated presentations from December 2014 to September 2016, the Johns Landing Commercial Area Association on June 23rd of 2016, the Heron Point Homeowner Association on September 2016, and River's Edge, finally. What he does not tell you that despite being asked, not a single board issued a statement to support his proposal. In fact, the SPNA reportedly voted unanimously against. Likewise, Heron Point. I do not know the breakdown of the vote at River's Edge, but reportedly they voted against the proposal as well. You should have received testimony to this effect. I believe the JLCAA, the only association mentioned in the resolution, did not vote up or down on the proposal. Michael Sullivan, actually my friend, will reportedly testify in support, a member of the JLCAA, but I want you to know that he's testifying as a citizen and not a representative of the JLCAA. Mayor Hales has been in the news over the past few days telling people to pull back on protests. Instead, get involved in our area boards, nonprofits, contact your representatives, come to council meetings, make yourself heard. Be part of the democratic process. Well, I'm here to tell you that we have done all that and the overall majority of the people represented by the area associations that you have contacted are telling you that they do not support this proposal. Listen to us.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Shelton Williams. I'm a co-owner operator of Matrix Integrated. Our business has been located at 4000 Southwest Macadam for over 15 years, and we were one of a handful of businesses operating in the South Waterfront before it started expanding and growing. And I'd like to address two concerns proposed to the South Waterfront Street Plan as it pertains to Southwest Lowell Street acquisition. And Mayor, to clarify one of the questions you had asked earlier, there actually is a Southwest Lowell Street between Macadam and Moody now. The city owns roughly 25 feet of it off of Macadam. They gave up the remaining section of it to the property owner a number of years ago.
Okay,
Now they want to realign it with the street that used to be aligned before the condos went in. Now trying to do that. I'll address that here with that. The first issue is the Southwest Lowell Street acquisition would require the city of Portland to purchase land, demolish a functioning business structure, and relocate a well-established business that serves the South Waterfront neighborhood community. The acquisition project adds millions of dollars to the budget that could be avoided by changing direction of traffic on two one-way streets approximately a quarter mile north on Southwest Macadam, saving valuable dollars to taxpayers within the city of Portland and Multnomah County. And this is just one of the potential options. We've been involved with Andrew and the organizations for the last couple of years in talks on this. Tried to provide multiple options, but this is just one of the options. Southwest Gain Street and Southwest Curry Street, currently about a quarter mile north of Lowell Street, are one-way streets entering and exiting the South Waterfront. If those streets were rerouted to allow traffic to enter on Southwest Gain Street, which is the southmost street, and then have traffic exit the South Waterfront on Southwest Curry Street, just the northmost street. Both Southwest Gain Street and Curry Streets have connecting through streets to Bond Avenue, which would allow traffic to flow north into the South Waterfront as needed, which would save significant funds by just having to change some traffic lights around rather than purchase land and move properties and businesses. The other issue is a safety concern. The vehicle and pedestrian traffic will be negatively affected on Southwest Macadam Avenue, asking drivers to merge over 2 lanes of traffic and just over 200 feet of highway when coming from the proposed Southwest Bancroft Street underpass is not safe. We have witnessed several accidents from drivers trying to make a quick lane change to get down either Southwest Lowell Street or Southwest Thomas Street. Having drivers travel down to Southwest Gain Street would allow a safer distance for vehicles to merge across Southwest Macadam before entering the Southwest Waterfront. And again, this is just another option, but there's many flaws in the plan with safety as well as cost.
So maybe if I could ask each of you that have concerns or objections here, it sounds like you may be okay, I'm not going to put these words in your mouth, I may have it wrong, with 2 of the 3 recommendations in terms of the 3 engineering issues that we just heard about, right? We have the Bancroft intersection change, the Lowell Street change, and the extension of Moody. You may be okay with 1 or 2 of those, but have a particular problem with the 3rd one, right?
Correct.
And I think it's really the Moody Street extension that you're most concerned about, right?
That, and we wanted the streetcar to go along from Bancroft to Macadam there, which is what's been the preferred alternative.
Right.
And
If it
so
was-
you'd make the changes at Bancroft
Speak
there.
into the microphone
Oh,
so the
sorry.
captioners can hear you. Thank you.
Is that, sorry, keep going, sorry.
Well, just that we want the streetcar to go from Bancroft to Macadam, and so we don't quite understand why the money is being spent to do the extension if, in fact, that's the preferred alternative. We had Dan Bauer last night come and tell us that that still was the preferred alternative to go on Macadam, not to come
Right.
from Hamilton Court forward.
But if it were the case, Sally, that the streetcar is never going to Lake Oswego, but it might go a few more blocks into your neighborhood,
It needs to get to the Selwood Bridge, I think, is what you guys would like.
maybe not. I'm saying if it were the case I'm just positing this. It'll be a decision other people will make besides me, but I've had a little to do with streetcars over the years.
Right, I understand.
If the streetcar is never going to Lake Oswego, if that's the reality, and if it just might go a few more blocks into your neighborhood someday, why put it on Macadam?
Well, I think you have other projects throughout the city that have greater needs on the east side.
No, I'm not saying that we're going to do this, but I'm saying if the fact is that the streetcar will never go more than another half-mile south, just throwing this out there, right? Just as a what if, why put it on Macadam?
Well, why do it at all?
Well,
if it's never
maybe
gonna
not.
go through?
I'm
Yeah.
just saying that.
Why spend the money?
Well, let me play back what I believe the streetcar is never going to Lake Oswego. Personal opinion. I believe the streetcar might go a few more blocks into your neighborhood someday, just like it might go from Northwest Northrop up into the Conway redevelopment someday. Maybe, maybe not. But I don't believe that any Portland City Council, just my prediction, okay, as a guy who's had a little to do with the streetcar over the years, my prediction is the streetcar is never going to Lake Oswego. There, I said it. And I think it might someday go a few more blocks into your neighborhood if the people in your neighborhood want it. But that's as far as I think it's ever going to go. So the debate about whether it's on Macadam or not, I think frankly is actually over, whether we've admitted that or not. So I think the question for your neighborhood now is not how do we keep the streetcar away from pedestrian life in our neighborhood, but how far do we actually want it to go? And I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll tell you, as a guy who's worked on 10 streetcar projects, not just Portland's, I don't believe it's going to go more than another half-mile south in
Right, to
Portland.
the Selwood Bridge, which is.
No, I don't think it's
yeah.
ever going to get to the Selwood Bridge, personal opinion, because there's no foot traffic on the Selwood Bridge. You take streetcars to where people are. And so I don't think it's ever going to go that far south. It might go a few more blocks into your neighborhood if you want it. So I would encourage you in this planning process and others that follow.
Well, we were told not to talk about the streetcar.
I understand that, but
At great length, and so I tried to make my
nobody can
comments
tell me
only
not
to
to
the
talk
street.
about the streetcar, so I went
Well,
ahead and did
we
so.
were told they were not connected, which I don't think that's true,
Yeah.
but that's why I made my comments not about the street, because I was directed by your staff not to do that.
Okay, not by my staff, but I appreciate that. Thank you. Other questions?
Can I just answer?
Yeah, please.
In regards to your question on, yes, my opposition is more to the Lowell Street part of it, section 2, as they have it labeled. And I think the additional costs there are other streets there. There's Abernathy, which I understand OHSU is not wanting that to be used as an entrance because of their loading docks there. But there are other street avenues that are possibilities that would also eliminate a large dollar figure in the funds when I know we're already in, trying to keep the budget down in this plan. But I think having to purchase property and relocate businesses just to align a street instead of asking traffic to go, a quarter mile or less out of further down, which also makes it safer, I don't think is unrealistic and is a better plan with it, especially when, as Commissioner Fritz was asking earlier too, about the coming off of I-5 north. We're already asking drivers to go out of the way because it's safer. This is a prime example of the same thing. I mean, there's been a number of angle crashes, if we want to call it that, from people trying to get over, and it's just not safe.
That's been very helpful. Thank you. Appreciate you being in a discussion here as well as testifying. Thank you. Okay, let's take the next folks.
Next three, Pasquale Pascuzzi, Madeline Stotsko, Charles Johnson, and they'll be followed by Len Mikan and Wayne Wines.
And is those two are the last two you have signed up?
Correct.
Okay, come on up. Good morning. Whoever's ready, go ahead. If you are, Charles or Amanda.
Want me to start?
Please, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thank you for, so loud, for the opportunity to talk today. I have a map.
Just give us your name again. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
my name is Madeline Stasko. I live on Landing Drive. And I originally supported the extension to Moody, and now I'm questioning it. And I have a map. Can I share it with you?
Please, sure.
Because I want
Yeah.
to do this quickly.
Just have one. We can pass it around. That's fine.
Hey.
That's okay. I'll take it. I'll take it. Sorry.
Little protocol here. Oh.
All right, protocols.
This is the first time I've
Oh, you
been
have
in city
copies. Thank you.
council.
All right, well, you're
Okay,
most welcome,
so
and we appreciate the
really-
visual aid.
Really quickly, the pink line, this was given to us. Last night I was at an HOA meeting and Dan Bauer was there.
Mhm.
And while he stressed that the Portland streetcar was not a part of this project, and while this is what Andrew also said, so I need to talk about it a little bit. But the pink line is where Moody is, okay? And
Right.
that's where the extension is. And then you can see where Landing Drive is, right there. And you can also see where the tracks are, right there,
Right.
okay? And so the 2 points that I want to make is, one, the project, the fourth goal was to look at the future development of the area. And that's one thing I think we need to look at. And the second is the congestion that will come with Moody being opened up to Hamilton Court. And I'm going to address that first. On this, it looks at, if you see the X's and the two little green signs, it looks at all the new construction being done down in the landing area. That hasn't been completed yet. And when that's complete, we're concerned with how much more congestion is going to be in that area. And the Johns Landing area, we may need Hamilton Court as a way of relieving some of the congestion. And if we open up the South Waterfront to Hamilton Court, we're kind of giving away some of the space that we may need next year when everything's open. And what I would like to see is to wait on that piece of it, to see what happens down on Landing Drive, and to see what happens in that area, and determine if it makes sense. I'd like to see a traffic study done, because when you put the bikes, if you do bring the train in, the streetcar in, just what would happen to that area? I don't think we can forego this little section of Landing Drive to save the South Waterfront area. And so that, and then to the second point of meeting the future, you did ask about, you asked about how far into Landing Drive to put the tracks. Nobody there wants it. They don't want it. And I would be fine with it going to the Moody if the extension's there. But then what happens, we're just setting ourselves up for the future, because if you look at the orange little dot, that's right where the tracks are. So where the Moody is, it just, across the street's the tracks. And so I think we have to be careful today of what we allow for tomorrow. Thank you.
Understand the concern, thank you.
Thank you.
Pasquale, please.
Pasquale Pascuzzi, Mayor Hales, Commissioners, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I am here representing Pascuzzi Investment, LLC, the owner of the building at 4000 Southwest Macadam. The ordinance before you requires the building to be deconstructed as a result of the proposed extension to Southwest Lowell Street between Southwest Moody and Macadam. My father, Gabriel Pascuzzi, purchased this undeveloped property in 1949 and finished construction of the subject building in 1953. It is a building that is well constructed and maintained. Our tenants, Matrix Integrated, are respected auto technicians that repair Porsches, Audis, and Mercedes vehicles. Approximately 30 people work in the building, and it is strategically located for their business needs. My family is heartsick over this proposed loss of the building and the compression of the subject tax lot from 29,197 down to 25,838 square feet. Staff believes our building stands in the way of a phased solution for relieving severe traffic congestion in the South Waterfront District. I believe this drastic action was the result of an approval by City of Land Use Case LU 07-153880 on Block 49. This is better known as the Gray's Landing Affordable Housing Facility on Southwest Lowell between Moody and Bond. In 2007, developers, the PDC, and staff agreed that the established 200-foot grid alignment should be altered and Lowell should be pushed north by approximately 50 feet. That objective was to increase the size of the Grays Landing footprint. This action created a misalignment between Lowell Street east of Bond and west of Moody. No one believed at the time that this would create a problem because of the plan recommended in the 2006 Kilderson study, Alternative 4A. That plan was formally adopted by City Council on April 8, 2009, and envisioned Southwest Hood Avenue traffic to pass under Interstate 5 and enter the district at the future Hamilton Street and Macadam Avenue signalized intersections. Fast forward, and the project that was $50 million in 2006 is significantly greater in 2016 dollars. PBOT, facing financial challenges, adopted the Kruger Plan, basically modifying the Bancroft and Macadam Avenue intersection to a two-phase signal change and diverting Southwest Hood Avenue traffic to an extended Southwest Lowell Street. Unfortunately for our tenants and my family, this extension of Lowell requires the demolition of our building. We trust this resolution, if this resolution is passed, City will fairly compensate our tenants for the significant inconvenience. However, I did not come here to remonstrate against this recommended alternative north of Bancroft. It has merit and will probably serve to reduce growing traffic congestion at the Moody Bancroft and Macadam Bancroft intersections. Instead, I came here to respectfully suggest that Council reject PBOT's proposal south of Bancroft. The ordinance before you severely limits the possibility of future street, rail, pedestrian, and bicycle improvements by removal of established corridors from the current plan. Specifically, staff wishes to remove the extension south of Bond Avenue, couple it with a logical connection to Southwest Hamilton Street, to the proposed southern extension of Moody Avenue. These future street alignments need to remain in the plan to provide significant street capacity when full build-out of the district occurs. I am mindful this decision will impose hardships on certain property owners that desire to have those established street corridors removed. However, it is clear sacrifices need to be made to increase vehicular traffic capacity in the southern portions of the district. And no one knows this better than the Pascuzzis.
I want to ask you to try to wrap up. Give you some
I'm
extra
done.
time. So, okay. I thank you very much. Appreciate it. Would you leave a copy of that for us?
I've got
if
a
you could?
packet,
Okay, good.
as well as an alternative plan.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Johnson.
Good morning, City Councilors. I think the first question I want to put before you is, where are the lids? The LIDs. When we started off this conversation, we talked about, I think, something like $90 million in the context of using up 9 years of SDC charges. And, one of the ideas behind city investment in areas is that they can become, we should think about at least, is that they should become self-sustaining. So I would like maybe for, if not right now, at a time to hear from Commissioner Novick about the dollar volume of this project in context of the greater street projects in Portland. I don't think that it's very popular. We finally elected a commissioner from the east side. That took a long time. And all of us are interested in equity and making sure that transportation spending in a tiny little confused problematic section of South Waterfront isn't disproportionate to what we can do for the rest of the city. I think you're going to fix the fact, we're weird, but we shouldn't be stupid. And having a Hamilton Street and a Hamilton Court that paralleled each other was interesting. That may go away. If we look at the CDE plan, Hamilton Street would just go away, and I guess Hamilton Court would stay Hamilton Court. But when we talk about finding our way around down there, which I would only ever try as a pedestrian. I'm not crazy enough to try and drive down there. But, I think the greater, there are 3 different PDFs with different possibilities, but I think that we don't want it to be cost-driven, we want it to be effectiveness-driven, but we also want to look at if property owners there have realized huge, at least on paper, financial gains, then when we look at the context of the general city budget for transportation, we want equity and fairness. Some other minor things more related to just the general weirdness of Portland. you can't have 5 quadrants. You can have 5 pentants. So when we get done, we're not going to have quadrants anymore, and we're going to have the 6 sextants of Portland, or whatever that would proper Latin would be. But I think that the zeros, as more and more newcomers come to the city, is something that that community should have a robust discussion about whether they want to become, instead of having confusing names like South Portland, South Portal, and South Waterfront. It'd be small, but South Portland seems to be something that they should definitely look at, whether they keep their zeros or not. So I think that's the scope of my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think we have 2 more people, and then we'll go to staff questions and action.
Len Mikan and Wayne Wines, please come up.
Good morning.
Morning. Sir. Morning. My name is Wayne. I didn't come here to contest anything specifically about the plan, but listening to the presentation, I wanted to point out that when the gentleman who was sitting on the right-hand side of the table mentioned he went out of his way, his agency went out of their way to get public feedback. In the next line, he specified property owners, local property owners. And then the lady in the middle kind of did the same when she was talking about feedback. In the next line, she said stakeholders. I wanted to clarify there's a big difference sometimes there's a big difference between the public and waterfront property owners. And when we're discussing a publicly funded agency who's contemplating the use of public dollars to affect public streets, we should probably be wary of what feedback we're getting. So that's all I came to say.
Thank you. Good point. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Len Michon. I'm chair of the South Portland Neighborhood Association, the SPNA. The proposal you have before you today is presented as a traffic congestion relief valve for egress from South Waterfront driving south. Your Exhibit B in the package that you have is a lengthy traffic analysis which does not take into consideration congestion created by northbound Johns Landing and Macadam traffic looking to move through the proposed Moody Avenue extension. Our letter of November 9 to you stated the SPNA position supporting certain changes to the South Waterfront street plan. 1, signal changes at Southwest Moody, Bancroft, and Hood, vacation of Southwest Thomas, realignment of Southwest Lowell, and installation of a dedicated turn lane on Macadam at Lowell. The Lowell realignment will go through an active business, as we've heard. The Pascuzzi family, while not happy with taking of their property, realizes this is good for the community. What we are not supportive of is the removal from the street plan of Southwest Bond, south of Bancroft, and of Hamilton Street east of Macadam. Removal of these streets limits the ability of the city to provide South Waterfront with an efficient movement of vehicles, creates additional traffic congestion and safety issues. The proposal would stack 4 lanes of traffic and potentially 2 lanes of streetcar and bicycle lanes on only 2 constricted, very constricted lanes of Moody Avenue, 1 southbound and 1 northbound, south of Bancroft. The connector between South Waterfront and Johns Landing areas of the neighborhood is welcome, but there is no relief provided. Consider the following. Number 1, 3 projects under construction or recently completed in Johns Landing add 600 plus rental units. 2, 4 undeveloped riverfront blocks in South Waterfront's Central District owned by Prometheus, 2 of which are proposed to contain 514 units. 3, OHSU's current construction in the Central District of additional treatment facilities doubling capacity, and in the North District, OHSU and Zidell's development plans. Multimodal transportation solutions certainly help move masses of people, but it is not as if the car will magically disappear in the foreseeable future. Congestion will continue to build in the Central District. The resolution before you today
has an estimated cost of $37 to $46 million. Do you want to spend that amount of money for limited results? Think through what I've said. Find a better solution.
Thanks,
Thank
Len.
you.
Thanks, Len. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Michael Taylor Sullivan. In the year 2000, my wife and I, along with our pet dog, Rafe, bought a home in the Johns Landing condominiums complex. Caring for an active poodle meant multiple walks, games of frisbee, and explorations north and south from Willamette Park to the abutments of Ross Island Bridge. On Sundays, my curiosity would direct me and the dog on walks to see vacant lots turned into boneyards, such as the one that collected the unassembled parts of the tram, destined to connect Pill Hill to the southwest waterfront area. Other connections, like the overflow parking for spaghetti factory customers, soon became weekend gateway venues for throngs of event goers, joggers, and general tourists venturing towards Willamette Park along the Willamette Trail. Today, the only northward gateway for businesses and residents of Johns Landing is the Willamette Trail. The remaining solitary corridor between Oregon Highway 43 and the river, these 16 years of development of the North Macadam District, is our half-mile-long collector driveway called Landing Drive. That ends at the Hamilton Court approach to Macadam Avenue. The opportunity to be part of the discussions in how best to conceive an important passage point where pedestrians and vehicles of all sorts can connect northward to neighbors, retail, and public spaces is of great importance to the continued thriving and growing South Macadam District. I know this to be true as I walk and run with our current pet, Raj. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thanks. So I have a couple questions for staff, and others might as well. So I want to maybe have a little discussion with staff and then ours.
I actually have a large number of questions,
Okay.
and I appreciate that this project has had 4 years of public outreach and 400 people involved in it. As we just heard, there's also the people citywide who now are just learning about it for the first time. So I'm wondering if it might be possible to carry this over till next week so that we could go in detail to all of the testimony that we heard this morning.
Commissioner Novick, what do you think about that suggestion?
I don't know if there's a problem with that. I just want to note that in addition to the staff we've already heard from, it might be useful to have Dan Bauer answer some questions about streetcar issues since he's in the room.
Well, it does feel like we need a bit of a work session and discussion with you. I think there's been some good issues raised in testimony here that I think we want to bear down on, but we also have other council business this morning, a lot of people coming here for that. So I can't remember, but Rachel and Sue will be able to remember what else we have on the calendar next week. We don't have uncrowded calendars for the rest of the year. I can take some of the blame for that. So what does next week look like?
So next week is the special meeting on Tuesday for the comp plan, and then your morning is full with time certain until 11 with time certains, and then there's be the regular agenda. The afternoon on the 23rd, you have a land use case that's expected to last till about 3:15.
Okay, so that might be a good day for a work session, even though it's the day before Thanksgiving, but.
I'm not going to be here. I
Okay.
just do want to note that Andrew has an 18-page memo responding to most of what we've just heard.
Right,
It's in our
so
packet.
I'm certainly going to need to read that.
So you're not going to be here at all on that Wednesday, Steve?
No.
Okay, then what about, and I won't be here on the 30th. So that's a problem.
Do we need to set it over to a time certain, or could we put it on a regular agenda?
What we could do is set it over to regular agenda, because again, I think there's a need for some discussion here and some further questions. I think there's a big picture philosophical debate here about public streets, which obviously we're touching on. And this neighborhood's had a history of that debate, going back to the original proposal for a gated community on what's now the Prometheus site, that led to the drawing of this first version of the street plan in the mid-90s, and I had a little to do with that. There are big issues here, like is the streetcar going any further, and do we want that or not, as I raised in the conversation with Sally. But then there's the question of whether these particular engineering solutions that you've come up with should move forward now, even if we don't resolve all the issues in the neighborhood. And those, to me, are the big questions here. But I guess maybe we should find a time and then put some things on the record that we want staff to respond to. So I would suggest at the end of a regular calendar next Wednesday. No, you're not here.
Yeah, also, let's see, how, do we have to address this issue because it's part of the comp plan amendment package before we vote on the comp plan amendments?
So, Commissioner, if you approve the resolution today, what the resolution does is it directs that the comp plan be amended. You have between now and, I'm not the planning expert, but you have between now and December 21st to approve the comp plan amendment. So, one option is to approve the resolution today and then address it as part of the comp plan. You can certainly take the other option of holding over the resolution and waiting to vote on it.
Sounds like you'd like to at least continue a little bit. So what about December 7th?
That's a rather busy day, as I recall.
Yeah.
We're going to take final action on the next item that we're hearing today, but that may not take us that long. What else is on December 7th calendar?
The morning is historic landmarks, and then in the afternoon is the infill vote and PAL division. So in the afternoon, let's see, 2, 3, 4, looks like you're booked till 4:30.
And Thursday the 8th?
On the 8th is inclusionary zoning expected to be for.
We have a couple of things on December as well. Just as a process.
Okay, well, let me suggest that we may have some work to do about figuring out when, but we should continue this item. So we'll do our logistics at greater length, but then notify the community about. But I'm hearing an interest, and I have one. I want to resolve this. I want to take action on this resolution, but I do want to have this a chance for the council to have perhaps a work session with staff rather than a lengthy council session. So that's another option, is that we'll schedule a work session and bring in resource people, and it's a public meeting, but we don't take further testimony and then have it back on the regular calendar after that. That might be the best solution here.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Okay. So anything in particular you want to put on the record now that you want them to address when we get that work session scheduled?
Well, we did hear about the eminent domain issue, and of course that's something that we all take very seriously if we're going to be talking about demolishing buildings and such. So I'm interested in how that might play out. I'm interested in Lansing Drive and any possibilities of doing some work there to address the concern of displacement. And
okay.
And there are probably some other things as well, but that's my main things right now.
Mayor, it's your call, but I really like your idea of a work session.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to continue this item indefinitely, but to be rescheduled. And for the folks that are concerned about this, we're going to schedule a council work session, which we typically do on Tuesdays or sometimes on Thursday mornings. And it's a roll up your sleeves, ask staff questions, call in some resource people to bear down on the details of something session. And we'll do that, and you can attend, and then we'll put it back on the regular council calendar for action after that. So bear with us. We'll pick dates over the next few weeks when those two things are going to happen, but we'll have first a work session and then have it back on the regular council calendar in a public session like this. And again, both of those meetings are public, but we typically are inviting staff to roll up their sleeves and work with us in a work session. So you'll be able to watch that process happen. So we'll continue this. Thank you for your work so far, and we'll return to it soon. Let's take a 2-minute break, and then we'll return to the next item on the council calendar, which is the fossil fuel resolution.
Thank you for the compassion break.
Yes. Morning, everyone. Thanks for your patience. We're going to get back to work here and move on to item 1281.
1281, restrict bulk fossil fuel terminals.
Thank you. So we had an excellent hearing on this proposal last week. We have people signed up that did not get a chance to testify then, and we also have a lot of interest in the room in continuing this discussion. But let me suggest a way that we might be able to move fairly quickly through this. I'm going to call our staff up to walk through the amendments, right? Is that the plan? And we have a worksheet in front of the council that has those potential, the amendments that were already put on the table last week, plus some additional ones based on testimony, and we'll identify those by number and content. So, Tom, thank you.
Okay, Tom Armstrong with BPS. Yes, as you said at last week's hearing, there were 4 amendments put on the table that were corrections and clarifications, as well as additional directions to staff for follow-up in 3 years to see how things are going, as well as following up on the seismic upgrades of storage tanks. Based on on the testimony from last week's hearing, council expressed an interest in looking at 4 additional amendments, which we have before you today. The first one, amendment number 5, was in response to testimony by the Working Waterfront Coalition to clarify the description of what we meant by storage capacity, to make sure it's clear that it's storage tank capacity. And so we've prepared a code amendment to make that clarification. 6 and 7 were sort of the conversation we got into around whether or not to allow for a 10% expansion with seismic replacement of storage tanks, or if we did not do that, would we want to consider allowing an expansion for fuel blending that is needed to comply with the state clean fuels program. And so that's what amendments 6 and 7 are. And then based on the outcome of 6 and 7, we have a revised ordinance and findings for you to adopt to support those amendments.
So that, I want to make sure if there are council questions about any of those, but I'm prepared to make a motion to take a group of those as a package and see if we are in agreement about that, and if not, we can unbundle them. How's that sound?
I appreciate that. I need some clarification on Amendment 5.
Yes.
Because it looks like in 33, 140, 100, B1, that we're still adding the 10%.
Yes, so it's a sequence of amendments as you go through. And so if you look at Amendments 6 and 7, you will see that the words tank has been included in there because we assume that that was a pretty straightforward amendment and would be made. So you amend it, you amend the recommended draft in 5 to add tank, and then when you decide 6 and 7, then that changes, those will change depending on which outcome, how the 10% is applied or taken away. So they build on each other.
It's still got 10% in there. I don't see I don't see where we're saying it's not 10% more.
So she's looking at 33, 140, 100, sub 1, where there's still a mention of 10% there.
Under Amendment 6 or under Amendment 7?
Under 7, and then
Right.
under...
So there's 2 options under 7. One is to, option 1 is to allow 10% expansion for both seismic and fuel blending. Option 2 is to allow it only for fuel blending.
But if we adopted Amendment 6, which takes the 10% expansion
Off the table.
out, then those words would disappear from that subsection?
Well, it depends on which outcome you want. If you want to allow no expansion, you adopt number 6, and you reject number 7.
Right, but then the words she's reading in that subsection, the 10% will
Never
allowance
comes
out.
up. It never comes up because you haven't adopted Amendment 7.
Right, so we're not giving any extra for blended, we're just saying.
If
size
you, if
discounts.
you
Take that
say
approach.
no to Amendment 7, then there would be no extra expansion for that purpose.
That's where I'm confused. Usually when we have amendments, I'm ready to say yes to everything. So you're just directing me which ones I've got to say no to.
Right, or not move. So here's what I'm going
At the top of
So here's what I'm
the
going to
cheat
propose.
sheet is a little, which outcome do you want?
So
Vote
we
yes
can
or
keep
no.
track of this, and so the public can, I want to make a motion to adopt a package of amendments. And they will include the first four, that is amendment number 1 that clarifies that truck-only terminals are not bulk fossil fuel terminals. Number 2, that clarifies that fuel storage for airports and marine servicing facilities and rail yards, i.e. filling stations for trains, planes, and ships, are not bulk fossil fuel terminals. Number 3, that clarifies our definition that non-fuel petroleum-based products like asphalt and lubricants that actually don't get burned and put into the atmosphere because they're put on the street, those are not bulk fossil fuel facilities. And then the 4th one, which was requiring some follow-up actions for council next year. Those are the ones that we discussed last week. Those have not changed, and those are included in my package. I also want to include in my package amendment number 5 that does this clarification about storage tank capacity. Amendment number 6, which deletes the 10% expansion, and I'm not going to include number 7, and then include number 8, which revises the findings. So here's my rationale. Let me see if there's a second for that motion. So here's my rationale for that. One, we heard very compelling testimony from the advocates for this policy that we should be totally clear that we're not interested in incremental expansion. And we also heard testimony from the fossil fuel industry that the hoped for result of that provision, which the staff was trying to be practical about, was not going to happen. And that is, it's not a sufficient incentive in and of itself to cause people to make seismic improvements. We need to deal with the issue of seismic improvements, whether it's by changing the state building code, the most likely way to do it, or by some other means, but we're not going to get it done with an incentive. So including an incentive that's not going to work, but compromises the intent of the ordinance is not a good bargain for anyone, and therefore I don't think we should take that approach at all. So that's the rationale behind this approach that I've taken. So if we're comfortable with that package, we can act on the package and then see if any folks are still interested in testifying, or whether they're ready to say thanks and go home, or whatever they want to do. But
Yeah, I think we heard the testimony, then we act
hear the
on it.
testimony. But so, okay, let's put that on the table. Give people a chance that were signed up last week to testify to do so, and then we'll see if we can proceed.
And please be aware that those are the amendments on the table, so if you're fine with them, you could just pass and we could continue to vote.
Right, okay, so yeah, if you still want to speak, or you think we still haven't got it right, don't hold back. All right.
Okay, we had about 25 people who didn't speak last week, and it starts with number 37, Nancy Crumpacker, 38, David Chatfield, 40, Bob Salinger.
Okay, any of those
Are
folks still
any
want to
here?
speak? All right, then let's move on.
The next three would be Wiley Barnett, Peter Wilcox, and Lyle Voss. Any of those people here?
Bob's here. Come on, Mr. Salinger.
How about Dan Senes on Southeast Madison? Marjorie Kirshner, Anna Tudayo, Brian Harmon.
Okay, looks like you got
Looks like we've got
your first
three.
three. All right, Mr. Salinger, I think you're first.
Good morning. My name is Bob Salinger. I'm the Conservation Director for the Portland Audubon Society. I was going to testify this morning in support of taking the 10% incentive off the table and keeping it off without any additional changes there. So I appreciate your comments already this morning. That's huge. I think it eliminates a real loophole, and something you've talked, Mayor, about how you want this to be replicable in other cities, other places. I think it's great that that's out of there, because that's the kind of thing that gets replicated. And it's also the kind of thing that once it's in there, it becomes an entitlement. It's hard to get back out. So congratulations on that decision already. This truly is an historic moment, and it's exciting to Audubon in part because I think it restores the kind of progressive visionary leadership which Portland is known for. Sometimes it feels a little like we've gotten good at preventing really bad things from happening, but not necessarily looking to the future and really leading the way, and this really, I think, restores that kind of role. And so it's an exciting moment, both in and of itself, but also I think it's sort of that kind of visionary leadership that Portland's been known for nationwide. The only thing I'll say this morning is I hope we really do go down to Salem now and pass legislation to make fossil fuel companies do the kinds of upgrades they should have done decades ago. It's absolutely reprehensible that they've been sitting on a ticking time bomb for decades, and they've known it. That put our communities at risk. These are some of the most wealthy companies in the city, the state, the country, and the world. They have the capacity to fix these things with or without an incentive, and they should have done it long ago. So it really is time to go down to Salem. I know everybody in this room and a lot of other folks would go with you and make sure that that happens and that it happens soon. So thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Marjorie Kircher from Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility has asked me to read her comments as she's unable to be here today. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for this opportunity to comment on groundbreaking zoning amendments that will protect our health and our climate. Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility wholeheartedly supports Amendment 6 and the Mayor's package. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, Dan Sears. I'm the Conservation Director for Columbia Riverkeeper. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for your leadership on this. The first issue, Bob's already said, I think we agree with Bob on the 10%, and thank you for taking that up. On Amendment 5, there's just two issues that kind of leapt out. First is coal is not stored in tanks. And so there's a potential problem there with adopting Amendment 5, which is just something we might want to try to figure out how to fix. And then the second piece is Amendment 5, if it's meant to address pipe capacity, in all likelihood, because pipelines are cited, pipelines that aren't pertinent to a large fossil fuel facility, if they're a big transmission pipeline going through, they're likely already exempt from this because of federal preemption, at least for natural gas pipelines. And so if that's a major concern, Amendment 5 may not be as necessary for addressing that piece if that's really where your focus is. So we strongly support Amendment 6 and the Amendments 1 through 4 as laid out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Others, Sue?
Okay, next, Byron Harmon, Robert Grossman, Paige Spence, Don Stanky,
Good morning.
and Alana.
Okay, you've got those three.
How about Michael Meskel?
All right, Michael, stand by, and we'll take these three and get you next. Good morning. Whoever's first, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Don Steinke from Vancouver, Washington, and I'm not perfectly sure if all of my concerns got addressed, so here we go. Methane is the main component of natural gas, and it has a very potent greenhouse effect. The EPA has recently declared that methane concentrations in the air have gone up 30%, and this increase has coincided with the leaks associated with fracking. We get most of our natural gas from frack wells in British Columbia, 12,000 of them, and maybe 100,000 in the Midwest. Fracking endangers the water, but it endangers our climate more. I believe natural gas is almost as bad as coal in terms of climate. Corporations are required to put shareholder value above the greater good. Once the pension funds and investment banks have built fossil fuel infrastructure, they will demand a return on investment for a lifetime. As of this month, all gas stations in Russia are required to provide electric car charging stations at their own expense. The upper house in Germany has asked the European Union to ban new cars that require diesel or gasoline by 2030, and Norway is planning to do that by 2025 and has already begun the transition with city vehicles, postal delivery trucks, and school buses. There is no fixed demand for anything. Demand is created by supply. The alternatives are here. The lease payments on my new electric car are only $130 a month. It won't use gasoline, biofuels, low-carbon fuels. We don't need increased infrastructure for them or for blending. Keep your ordinance strong. I support Amendment 6, and come back in a month or two and consider having new construction make charging outlets accessible to all occupants in new infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Hales and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Paige Spence, and I am the Oregon Conservation Network Director at the Oregon League of Conservation Voters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the amendments. I'm particularly grateful to City Council for continuing to work on mitigating climate change in light of recent national elections, which have me and all the groups I advocate for very fearful of environmental protection rollbacks under the new administration. The Oregon Conservation Network, or OCN, is very grateful for the work that has gone into improving the resolution that you all passed a full year ago. First, with regards to allowing for the 10% expansion, we really appreciate you taking another look at this in order to limit the potential expansions, and we support your proposed package of amendments, Mayor Hales. Second, we ask that you eliminate the exemption for new facilities less than 2 million gallons. As you know, the new regulations have a list of facility types that are exempted from the regulations, and we urge you not to include a blanket exception for facilities under 2 million gallons. Fossil fuel demand should be declining, as we all agree, and the amendments need not allow for new fossil fuel infrastructure. And third, please continue to reject Northwest Natural's efforts to be exempted from these regulations, as the PSC did as well. I, along with OCN, am excited to see the very positive results of this process and be a part of our transition away from fossil fuels. Thank you sincerely for all your work to make this possible. And I also want to thank some other groups who are a part of OCN and some who are not. 350 PDX, Portland Audubon, Columbia Riverkeeper, Climate Action Coalition, Friends of the Columbia Gorge, Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility, the Center for Sustainable Economy, the Sierra Club, Climate Solutions, OEC, and the OLCV, Multnomah County Leadership Committee. Tons of great work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Alona Steinke. I'm a retired RN from Vancouver. I have asthma, and I'm concerned that allowing any new terminals to be built would put more dangerous and polluting trains on the track. Increasing the number of unit trains not only would increase the likelihood of derailment, fire, and explosion, but it also increases the toxic and cancer-causing air pollution from the 4 diesel locomotives that power each train. Senators Wyden and Merkley and Congressman Blumenauer have referred to Portland's air pollution as a public health emergency. In Vancouver and Clark County, we have failed air quality standards in the past, and last year we came within one bad air day of being declared non-compliant. Our Columbia River is the second most endangered river in the U.S., and the haze in the gorge is the worst in the western United States. The city of Vancouver has an ordinance that only addresses oil. Portland, now you're a real climate leader by adopting a more comprehensive ordinance. You have set an example for the cities of Vancouver, Hoquiam, and for Whatcom County. You've already captured international attention by your bold action. Canadian Member of Parliament Elizabeth May has also endorsed your resolution. Cities have to lead, and you are leading us into a future where we have clean water and air that doesn't make us sick, a future that is safe for our children, our grandchildren, and generations beyond. And thank you for supporting Amendment 6.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Next, Micah Meskel, Mary Pavito, Akash Singh.
Okay. Good morning.
Thank you, Council and Mayor, for having us back. My name is Micah Meskel. I work with the Audubon Society of Portland, and I was also a steering committee member for the Natural Hazard Mitigation Planning process, in addition to the CEI Hub process that looked at the terminals themselves. Appreciate the current set of amendments, and I'd like to expand a little bit on what PBEM's presentation last week given by Jonna. I'd like to make a couple points from the steering committee itself. So the vulnerability of the current infrastructure is a big deal. Most of it was put in place before building codes, and it is a ticking time bomb. And we think that bolsters the argument to remove the 2 million gallon threshold for new facilities. We think adding any new infrastructure to the CEI hub is a big mistake, because that those new facilities are still vulnerable to explosions from the facilities that have not been upgraded because of the close proximity of that area and the likelihood that it could all slough into the river with an earthquake. So we think putting any new infrastructure there, no matter the size, is only adding to that issue. And then one point that Jonna, as a PBEM staffer, may have been reluctant to advocate on, but I will, as a committee member, I will speak up to, is the need for BDS, fire, and PBEM to be adequately supported in the process of moving down through Salem to adjust to look into proposals regarding building codes. They need proper staffing for that, and they also need the political support of council. We think that's paramount in taking this process to actually looking at how we can really add safety to our community through requiring those seismic upgrades.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mary Pivoto, and I'm here with Neighbors for Clean Air to support, Mary, your package of amendments, particularly number 6 and 1 through 4, with also the considerations for 5 that were already spoken to. I just wanted to say that in 2010, when we started to look at air toxics, it didn't take us long to get to the tank farm on Highway 30. There are 7 companies. They operate 8 terminals. They include 586 storage tanks, and they have a total capacity of 300 million. And what concerned us was that they emit, just those storage tanks sitting there emit 1,394 tons annually of volatile organic compounds. And for us, this tank farm is the embodiment of the disconnect between the type of innovative Portland ideals that have brought us to a 19% reduction in carbon emissions for 1990 standards and the state of our state air emissions regulations, which deal with the other 188 classified air pollutants, and really which have only served to mimic federal regulations, antiquated federal regulations. And this has put people in harm's way, and our innovative and continued progressive residential infill in our city and the growth is just putting more and more people in harm's way in these places. So I offer this testimony as the backdrop of obviously supporting. I don't see any reason that we would be doing expansion. I think we have got to use every lever that we have to eliminate, to get rid of this dangerous juxtaposition for its existing threat and for the future threat in a catastrophic earthquake. And I'd also, I guess, like to use this opportunity, never to give up an opportunity, to put a plug into your group to empower your representative, the City of Portland's representative on the Governor Oregon, Cleaner Air Oregon Advisory Committee, Susan Anderson, so that she will help all of us maximize the potential authority that the state has through the air emissions regulatory jurisdiction to drive these and all of our industrial facilities to modernize, to do what they need to do to meet the ideals of our 21st century Portland sustainability and growth goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Akash Singh. I am a student fellow at the Institute of Sustainable Solutions, and I'm also here in conjunction with Neighbors for Clean Air. So I am strongly in support of this entire proposal, especially amendments 1 through 4, 6, and the considerations that were put in regards to coal for number 5. Last week, an industry representative noted that he felt like meat invited to a barbecue. It was darkly amusing that a man who was sticking his knife into the meat itself imagined that he was a part of the meat. Speaking as someone who is a part of that meat, I cannot underscore what last Tuesday meant for every marginalized individual in this country, for every individual who strives to make this world a more equitable place. A good chunk of what that equity is in regards to is environmental justice. EJ means that by protecting the most vulnerable populaces among us, from the effects of climate change, we can protect everyone else. I choose to believe that today, in part, we can prove that Portland deserves this reputation of being a liberal, progressive icon that truly is a beacon of leadership amongst urban America. I choose to believe that my elected city officials will stand with basic scientific truth, the moral responsibility of protecting our most vulnerable citizens, and the existence of this planet for generations to come. I especially beseech you to listen to the voices of our indigenous communities. Our First Nation tribes in no uncertain terms voice the critical danger that fossil fuels pose to their existence. We cannot afford to ignore their voices, silenced by the original sin of this country, any longer. As was noted last week, Governor Barbara Roberts is celebrating her 80th birthday this year. I entreat you with today's vote to start living for all of the people who may or may not get those precious 80 years. And the first step towards that is making sure that we reduce or possibly eliminate our dependence on fossil fuels. Today, I implore you to use your offices to protect the citizens who put you there, to protect the most vulnerable among us with the power you hold, the power that people bestowed upon you with their votes. Today, I implore you to stand with us in this planet's greatest time of need. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Next, Peter Wilcox, Ted Gleichman, Peter Miller, Harriet Kuhl, Trish Weber,
I'll let Mr. Wilcox proceed, and then we'll call some more.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Hales and other commissioners. Nice to see you. My name is Captain Peter Wilcox. I'm the president of Columbia Riverkeeper and speaking today primarily in that capacity. I'm also a co-founder and owner of Sequential Biofuels, which for 15 years has made certified biodiesel over 8 million gallons a year from recycled food processing oil, fully reclaimed product. This is a clean and ultra-low carbon biodiesel which can turn even Volkswagen TDIs into clean, true green vehicles. Excuse me, I talk about vessels a lot.
Yes, you do.
We and Columbia Riverkeeper and I can see no reasonable justification for the proposed 10% storage tank capacity expansion, and I'm glad to hear about Amendment 6, and we're glad to support that amendment and your recommendation on that, Mayor. Fossil fuel use has been flat or in decline for many years in Oregon, and a central point of the policy that you passed a while back was to make sure that that trend continues and accelerates. The gradual market penetration of electric vehicles and increasing fuel mileage of newer vehicles will ensure this. Furthermore, there's a massive worldwide growth in the clean biofuels industry, as well as a dirty biofuels industry that we have to be careful of, I might add, including the fairly recent development of cost-effective methods to make a bio-based renewable diesel, which meets exactly the same specs as petroleum diesel and can be used in absolutely any diesel engine seamlessly without any blending, I might add. So the blending issue is on its way from technology standpoint and from the development in this field of bio-based fuels and lubricants becoming less and less important as we move towards fuels that can be used without blending. That's already happening in diesel, but it's going to happen in the gas arena as well. They're now making bio-based fuels and lubricants around the world from cellulosic waste, garbage, sewage, and the big prize is algae. And of course, we have a global explosion of algae and overproduction of algae around the world's oceans because of warming, and that's going to create an opportunity to make an awful lot of bio-based fuels in the future. One of the most important aspects of the new fossil fuel policy is, as the first example of such a policy anywhere, of course, is that it'll be utilized, as you said, as a template around the world and around the country for policy, and so we want to make sure that the policy is the best one possible, and I think you're now on track to do that, so I support that, and want to thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning.
I'll defer to Ms. Weber. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you.
Bet.
Good morning. My name is Patricia Weber. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to testify before you today. I strongly support Amendment 6, and I urge you to adopt it. And the reason is simple. Seismic upgrades of buildings and other facilities is not under the purview of land use code planning provisions. Rather, they're regulated by building codes. Therefore, it is not appropriate for the zoning code to be amended to incent seismic upgrades. My professional background includes working for over 20 years as a licensed professional engineer in Oregon, as well as 10 years in the land use planning profession. My land use planning experience involves both serving on the Corvallis City Planning Commission and working as a private sector consultant. So I have sat on both sides of the desk, so to speak. The purpose of land use planning is to develop vibrant and sustainable communities. Good land use planning regulations start by organizing different uses within the community in a way that meets the policies of the city's comprehensive plan. Beyond that, regulations that apply to individual properties are developed to promote compatibility between properties and their neighbors. When considering compatibility issues, factors such as basic site design, visual elements, impacts on traffic, parking, odors, natural features, and so on are to be considered. Land use planning regulations traditionally stop at the exterior of a building or a facility. Everything that pertains to the construction of the building inside and including its exterior cladding is regulated by building codes. It is not clear whether allowing a 10% expansion in exchange for seismic upgrades would be a violation of jurisdictional boundaries, but it would certainly violate what is considered best practices in the building and development fields. Incorporating building life safety issues into zoning regulations set precedent to include regulations covering fire alarm systems, outdated electrical wiring, or asbestos removal, to name a few building code issues. Given the testimony that you received indicating that a 10% incentive would be ineffective at actually incenting seismic upgrades, testimony that jibes with everything in my professional experience, by the way, and that the public testimony overwhelmingly rejects the 10% expansion, the appropriate mechanism by which to address seismic resiliency is through PBM and the City-State Building Codes Division.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. Morning.
Good morning, Mayor, members of council. I'm Ted Gleichman, today representing the Oregon Sierra Club. I gave copies of my testimony to the council staff and also in collaboration with Gregory Monahan, who spoke with you last week right after the amazing teenagers.
Tough act to follow.
Exactly. On the other hand, as grandparents, Gregory and I and a huge percentage of the membership of Sierra Club feel very strongly about the opportunities for everybody's grandchildren going forward, and we really appreciate all the work that you've put in. So what I provided you with is the three open letters that we prepared, one last week, which is submitted as testimony in writing last week, and then one today focusing on looking into 2017 and beyond, the continuous improvement challenge for these issues. We, of course, associate ourselves with all of the comments that you've heard today so far. I knew that Engineer Weber would provide us with an excellent assessment of the fact that there's really no true connection between seismic upgrades and fossil fuels use. It's a difficult and complex issue, but you are experts on what is coming with the earthquake. And so I know that this is an issue that is going to go on well into the future, beyond the direct, really first-rate work that you're doing right now. So 3 quick points from today's testimony. Policy versus emergency. It's standard for agencies, and I worked in municipal government for a long time, to see things in a policy framework. The word emergency is not used often enough in this situation because it is generally such a slow motion catastrophe in terms of climate change. The earthquake is an emergency, the likes of which none of us have ever seen, and we won't see it until we see it. And then the new one that I referenced in my testimony last week, 2017 Federal Energy Policy, which, as we know and was commented on at length, will be disastrous. I think as you're working with community stakeholders, referencing this triple catastrophe set of emergencies is very helpful. Second, business as usual versus responsibility for just transition. This is something that I think is very difficult for all of us. We are such creatures of habit, and I would urge you to think about that systematically going forward, especially with large enterprises and other stakeholders. And finally, BPS and PSC have done amazing work. I want to make life slightly more difficult for Director Anderson by proposing, as the third item, agency reporting versus crowdsourced creativity. Amendment 4, the 3-year report back, I would suggest should be looked at as a milestone, not a solution. And there's no reason, for example, that every building permit pulled in relationship to fossil fuels could not be posted and in a notification structure. I mean, I get notifications every time there's a crash on the Sunset Highway. Once in a great while, that matters a great deal to me. The same sort of modern tool structure could be used to improve the basic communication practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good suggestions. Thank you. Okay, others?
Okay, and then we have two more, Charles Johnson and Jonah Meyer.
Come on up, please.
You can go first. You're first on the thing.
Okay. I want to thank the city for for the record, Charles Johnson, Oregonians for Food and Shelter Sanity, a very different organization than Oregonians for Food and Shelter. So I think that, that we've talked about the 10% incentive cap is not going to work. What we have before us is pretty good. I think that if the amendment with the 3-year report back passes, we don't need to change it in here, but I think in general terms, I'm addressing only one of you that's sitting up there. It's going to be here in 2 months, let alone 2 years. But when we restrict other people, we should also talk about doing our best. So we also need to know how well the city is moving from fossil fuel powered vehicles to zero emissions vehicles. And so it won't be able to be part of the Charlie Hale's legacy, but I think the city and leadership should look to codify ways that we are working to wean ourselves off the poison that is fossil fuels. We had some excellent testimony just in the past few minutes about people talking about being able to lease an electric car, a zero emissions vehicle, for under $140 a month. In Portland, we want to be comprehensive and make sure that the state holds Governor Brown to the highest standards, better than she's doing in regard to Nestle bottled water in the gorge, that we move to so that the electricity that's powering these cars is the cleanest possible energy, not coal-based. There's some concern about hydro, grow wind and solar. So when you pass Amendment 4 and we do report back so that we can have progress reports, I hope that everyone will keep in the discussion our own personal responsibility to match ambitious goals that we impose on that dirty, stinking fossil fuel industry.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Jonah Major. I'm a queer millennial farm worker, and I work on Sauvie Islands. And honestly, you three are going to be dead by the time climate change really starts to impact my generation. Even with no new infrastructure, even with the Paris Agreement, we're still going to face an absolute climate catastrophe, especially in the global south. We may be more okay here in Portland, but we're going to be seeing a lot of climate refugees coming here because of that. Unfortunately, clean fuels is something we're talking about today, and that has actually made it easier for fracked sources of fuel like gas and Bakken oil to actually come into our city, come into our state. And I don't really think that's something we should even be talking about today. I don't really see why we're fooling ourselves about, just a 10% expansion. If Donald Trump is going to be president, we're going to be seeing massive amounts of extraction, even after the Obama administration has increased extraction across the country. He's president entirely because Democrats and liberals weren't progressive enough. They weren't standing up enough for social justice. They weren't standing up enough for environmental justice. Honestly, I am seeing a pretty different response here today than we saw just a few weeks ago during the police contract vote. And I think that really shows the kind of privileges that the environmental community is afforded. Who are the police unions going to listen to across the country when the vast majority of them supported Trump and many of the police officers also supported Trump? They have all the military gear that was built up by not only you all, but the Obama administration. And now we're seeing them cracking down on protesters and following protesters instead of actually investigating hate crimes and systemic violence. Really, what we need to be doing is focusing on our rights to protest, on our rights to fight for a livable future for everybody. And since we are here because of the Shell No protests that y'all cracked down on a year ago, I think it's really important to recognize that there is always a time for protest. And we need to be going to actually dismantle all the fossil fuel infrastructure we do have as quickly as possible by creating a just transition for fossil fuel workers, for people in our communities who have been disenfranchised by the fossil fuel economy, making sure they have unionized jobs in safe energy, safe transit, and safe agriculture. And we need to be giving these systems to those who have been oppressed under capitalism. And most importantly, we need to make sure that we're continuing to listen to tribes, those who are living here on unceded lands. We need to make sure that we are recognizing all the treaties and all the needs of the indigenous peoples of this area. And I really don't think that the city has been doing that. Now's the time for local and state governments to be using all the tools in the toolbox, whether it's eminent domain or mutual aid, to make sure that we are able to resist a Trump presidency and the increased extraction from the systems that created Trump: capitalism, colonialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, all those things. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog PDX. If we continue to incentivize fossil fuel industry, and they're going to continue to make a tremendous amount of profits, they're going to continue to do what they're doing, we need again to focus on a carbon tax. We need to have an understanding that they have a hidden carbon subsidy of about $5.3 trillion per year. The incentives to do fossil fuels is so great right now, they're going to continue to do it. One of the issues I see along the riverfront, we have the Superfund cleanup there. We need to remove these storage tanks off the river. We need to understand they don't need to be there. They should have never been placed there. We need to work with these companies and consider somehow, some way to buy them out and get them out of there. We're not doing that. We know if there's a major earthquake, we're going to have serious problems. We already have a Superfund cleanup that, in my estimates, will go over $10 billion. Everybody wants to talk your $800 million. Well, you're in fantasy land. The amount of money it's going to cost to clean this river is so great. We need to understand we need to remove those storage tanks from the rivers. And plain and simple, another issue that I have is that we need to keep understanding that we all talk about going electric vehicles. Well, Elon Musk, he's an intelligent individual, okay, very smart man. But the reality is he can tell you too, it's going to take many, many, many years, and he's building his battery storage facility, and he predicts to go out maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 of those facilities. It's going to take many, many years before you go sustainable. The reality is we need to phase it in. The reality is we need to do a serious carbon tax. The reality is it's going to take a tremendous amount of time, but there should be nothing on these rivers if we have a serious disaster that can flow contaminants into this river like we've done for the last 50 plus years that was allowed. We've got to stop that now, discontinue that now, and quit sitting there and going, well, we'll just keep you from expanding. Well, that's not good enough for me. We need to talk to these companies and say, what's it going to take for you to remove these tanks off the river? We already have a Superfund cleanup out in front of us. Now, what are you going to do for us? We need to talk to them in that manner. And as far as President-elect Trump, get ready, Paris Agreement. Get ready, fracking. Get ready, because he's going to come in here in a whole different direction, and you better get ready at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. So I think that completes our sign-up sheet, except we do have a student here who
Right.
we always make exceptions for students. So,
Leo. Yes, I mispronounced your name, so
oh, please come
go
on.
on up, please.
We began this hearing with students, so it's appropriate that you get the last word. Thanks for being here this morning.
Dear Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Liel. As more and more pipelines and trains and barges carry toxic coal, oil, and gas to where it gets burned, and animals and people are dying of the effect of global warming. You heard a lot of kids speak last time to stop adding more fossil fuels. I know you might think we are just kids who don't understand all the decisions and details that adults have to make, but think about who might be wiser here. Kids who have everything to lose in this world, or the adults who got us in this mess in the first place. We waited too long already, and we need to stop using fossil fuels as quickly as possible. Please vote for no building new tanks or pipelines or anything that carries fossil fuels for any reason. Please, please listen to us and vote for the strongest law you can. Thank you.
Thank you. We make exceptions for students in the faculty. So before we take action on the amendments, I do want to clarify the issue that came up about amendment number 5, and that is, does it properly cover the potential for a coal terminal here, which is obviously something we were trying to make sure we didn't have happen. I understand that the existing language may do the job, but let's get that on the record and clarify that.
Yes, so under the language, and we looked at it in response to that testimony, it would be possible for an existing fossil fuel facility to store coal. You could not have a new one come in, but if an existing tank farm wanted to start to remove tanks and have piles of coal on it, they could. Those existing facilities are anywhere from 2 to 40 acres, so they're much smaller in site size than what we see in terms of the proposals for coal terminals elsewhere. But it would be limited. The opportunity there is limited to the existing terminals.
But I thought
under the current language.
Well, I think it's not our intent to allow the conversion of oil facilities to coal facilities. I'm certain of that.
Right.
So is the use of the word tank sufficient to ensure that that won't happen, or do we need to add language?
If I would recommend that you actually look at Amendment 6, which is where you were headed, and that to paragraph A, you just add a phrase at the end there, a new sentence that says the storage of coal is prohibited.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, well, further amendment 6 to include that provision. Any other questions for
The
our staff?
concern about pipes, and if you had a big enough pipe, you could essentially be moving more oil through.
In terms of turnover.
Yeah.
You know, I think they brought up in testimony that the pipeline regulations tend to be more in the federal realm, and at least right now, the city and BDS is not. We don't really regulate the amount of throughput through this. It's an issue that we heard at the PSC, and that it was, I guess, beyond what we were looking at through this project in terms of, is it a bigger pipe, or how much turnover or throughput comes through these facilities. The pipe it would represent a major investment to rebuild and expand the pipeline from Puget Sound down to Portland and from Portland to Eugene. And there would be a whole bunch of federal permitting involved as part of that process.
And again, in terms of there was some good testimony here today about this is our zoning code, this is about this piece of land and that piece of land and that piece of land. So it's not the right tool to affect the pipeline issue. We may or may not have adequate state or federal regulation, but it wouldn't be in this piece of the law.
Right.
So that is something that we might want to look at again, thinking of the Pembina proposal. I wouldn't like to see just not storage, just a big enough pipe and loading stuff directly onto ships, but we can consider that in a process.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's take a vote, please, on the amendments package.
Novik.
Oh, as further amended by our last amendment about the coal issue. So thank you, Steve. Sorry.
Appreciate all the testimony and the clear staff presentation and the mayor's efforts. Aye.
Fritz.
Well, once again, I'm very proud of our community. I'm very proud to be one of your commissioners to do this partnership. And thank you for the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, Directors Anderson and all the folks who've worked very hard on this. We're not done, and we have to continue to looking for ways that we can support our planet, support our community, and make sure that things are safe and that we do move as quickly as possible to renewable energy. I was struck by Leah talking about it's our generation that has passed on many of these big problems. And I'm thinking back to when we stopped using hairspray and we banned styrofoam, which was at a time thought to be really avant-garde and probably was going to do the trick. And obviously now that we know that that's not the case, we have to make many more different changes in our lifestyles as well as in our purchases. So thank you, Mayor, for leading this. And I will be voting on the whole ordinance next week, but I'm very appreciative of the amount of time you yourself have put into this work. Aye.
Hills.
Well, let me start with some thank yous. Elected leadership matters, and I'm proud of ours, but having excellent public administrators and staff matters as well. And if it weren't for Susan Anderson and Michael Armstrong and Tom Armstrong and others in our bureau, we wouldn't be where Portland is today. And Susan has been an author of many of our path-breaking policies, and her team turned those into real work that then become law and the shapers of our city. So I want to commend you all. And then Zach Klonowski and my staff has been a fervent advocate for this and other environmental policies, and I know this is a great day for you, Zach. Thank you for all your work. Let me say a little bit about democracy and a little bit about Portland's role. We sometimes have people come to this chamber and say, we don't have a voice. And that bothers us because we believe people should. And then we have actions like this one, where we put something on the table, we develop it to a point that we think is right, and then the community comes in and says, here's how to make it better. And that happened in this discussion last week and this week about the 10% threshold or allowance. And it happened just today in this fine point about, are we really sure we've outlawed coal facilities? So I hope you feel affirmed. I always do when this happens, when the community comes in and helps us do it right. And so at a time where we're worried about democracy, it's still here in Portland. So thank you for being part of that, and thank you to 350pdx.org and the Sierra Club and Riverkeepers, Audubon, and all the other organizations who brought people here as community members to make the case. Secondly, I'm very proud that in the last part of my work in this city, I will go from having been a dark brown-haired city commissioner adopting the first climate action plan to being the guy I am today, doing this, but also that at a time where we're really worried about, will cities still be able to lead, we're going to be able to do this and show that cities do lead. And in fact, I will get to carry the message of this action first to the C40 conference in Mexico City, where I think our fellow city leaders from around the world are going to be wondering, are United States cities still in this? And I have been saying that. We are still in it. United States cities that are climate action cities are still in this. We will continue and in fact accelerate the work at the local and partnership level, even if we don't have a responsible partner at the federal level. And they need to hear that. All those other cities, Rio and Sao Paulo and all the other 83 cities of the C40 network need to know that we're still in, that we're still responsible, and we're still moving forward. So those are nice words, but this will prove that that's true. And that's going to be enormously helpful to the credibility of this movement. And then secondly, I started a tradition last year of having all the West Coast mayors get together and talk about a couple of issues at the time. And we're going to get together in December. And I hope Mayor Wheeler, when he takes office, continues this tradition. And obviously, this issue is going to be on the table because we have cities up and down this coast that share our belief in the critical importance of climate action at the city level and in the ability to work together. So there's been a lot of talk about walls lately. I hope that those cities work together to build a green wall along this part of the United States' border that changes what we do and how we live, but also changes the world. So thank you all. It's a proud day for Portland, proud day for me personally, and a proud day for all of us who advocate for doing the right thing. Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
And let the record show that that was a standing ovation.
We're going to take a recess because I want to thank this young lady right now.
How long?
1 minute.
Yeah, I think we
do have some more work to do.
That allowed me to use my line again about December 7th being important the day we're losing the pandemic.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, we're going to move on, so feel free to move into the hall and continue your conversations, but we're going to take up item number 1282, please.
1282, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with eligible parties for the sharing of Emergency Operations Center personnel with the Greater Portland Metropolitan Region when personnel are unable to get their normal reporting location.
So Commissioner Novick,
Take it away, Jonna.
busiest woman in Portland, here she is.
For the moment. Good morning, thank you. My name's Jonna Papefthimiou, and I am the Planning, Policy, and Communications Manager for the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management. A project I've been working on for over a year, and that I'm very pleased to present today for your approval, is the Emergency Operations Center Shared Worker Agreement. So this IGA says that Emergency Operations Center responders in one jurisdiction can report to the Emergency Operations Center of a different jurisdiction and work there during an emergency if transportation systems are disrupted and they can't report to their normal work location. So this agreement represents the shared commitment of emergency responders across our region to do the most good that we can following a major disaster. And it reflects the leadership of the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization and collaboration between the City of Portland, Multnomah, Clackamas, Clark, Washington, and Columbia counties. Implementation of this agreement will mean creating a shared list of qualified emergency responders who can report to any open emergency ops center. Workers from a lending jurisdiction will function as contract employees within the borrowing jurisdiction. No jurisdiction is obliged to accept workers, nor is any worker obligated to report to another jurisdiction if they do not choose to do so. I would be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, makes sense. Questions for Jonna? Anyone want to speak on this item? Okay, maybe not. All right, so this we cannot act on today, so we're going to continue this item for council action tomorrow.
I think it's not an emergency.
Yes, it shows as one on mine.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm afraid it is, Steve, so, but we can take it, we can do it tomorrow.
It's actually the kind of thing that you wonder, why haven't we done this before? So thank you to both you and Commissioner Novick for getting it done now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It is.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Jonna. We'll put this on the calendar for tomorrow, just as a continued item, and we'll take action then. 1283,
1283, authorize the Bureau of Transportation to allocate $500,000 to the Portland Parks Foundation for construction of the footbridge over Burnside.
Commissioner Novick again.
Let's see, these are funds that are budgeted in PBOT's current fiscal year budget. PBOT's intended to provide the final funds only when there's clear demonstration that adequate funds are available to proceed with the project. The Parks Foundation has raised $1.7 million in private donations, so PBOT is asking to transfer $500,000 in a one-time donation. The Portland Parks Foundation will lead the crossing project, including working with project stakeholders, and we're pretty darn excited about this.
Yeah, it should be. It's great. Questions? And then anyone want to speak on this item? So this moves to second reading next week. 1284.
1284. Make administrative changes to the motor vehicle fuel tax code for more efficient implementation of the street repair and traffic safety program.
Roll call, please.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hales.
Thank you, Steve. Aye. 1285. Oh, you want to read, 1285 is first, and then the others are read together, is that right? 1285 is the marijuana and parks issue.
That's separate.
Yeah, it's separate. Okay, 1285, please.
1285, amend provisions relating to possession of marijuana in parks to conform to state law.
Commissioner Fritz.
So this is currently there's a park rule that says that mere possession of cannabis in a park is an offence, and obviously it's not now that it's legal. And so Harry Albach has been working with us to make sure that our parks ordinances comply with state law.
Yes, this after the passage of Measure 91, which legalizes in Oregon possession of less than an ounce by people over 21, We received concerns expressed from the Code Hearings Office and the District Attorney's Office about trying to enforce a prohibition on that in city parks. And after discussing the matter with the parks folks and the Commissioner's Office, we determined that it really wasn't a matter that concerned the health, welfare, and safety in parks if people who were otherwise legally entitled to possess it possessed an amount that was legal in a container that was closed because of the word meeting use or distribution issues. And so we proposed this amendment to the city code to conform to the current state law.
I would actually like to amend this throughout to change the word marijuana to cannabis, because that's the more accurate term.
Consider that a housekeeping change in the ordinance.
We're going to be doing it throughout the code, just so you know. Thank you.
Okay, questions for Harry? Thank you very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? Not?
Just as a reminder, it's not legal to use these kinds of substances in parks, or indeed no smoking or using intoxicants in our parks at all. Thank you.
Thank you. And moves to second reading next week. And now 1286.
Do I have to propose that we're doing the change? It's just a Scrivener's error from...
Yes, yeah,
Thank you.
that's assuming that's a housekeeping change to change marijuana to cannabis in every case. Okay, 1286 and 87 together, right?
1286, authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for construction of the Colonel Summers Park splash pad and Portland Blue installation project. And 1287, amend contract with DAO Architecture LLC in the amount of $3,500 to complete work on the Colonel Summers Park gate design.
And 1288 as well, please.
Design and assign the Mount Tabor Annex from the Portland Parks and Recreation to the Portland Housing Bureau for development of affordable housing.
Okay, Commissioner Fritz, all parks items.
So the Buckman community in Southeast Portland has been waiting for these improvements to Colonel Summers Park. They are partially paid for with system development charges because they will expand the capacity of the park. And Parks Development Program Manager Lauren McGuire will tell us more about both of these.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Hello, Mayor Hills and members of council. Again, my name is Lauren McGuire, Development Program Manager. We're here today for the two reasons read, to request council authorization to bid and to amend a contract with Dow Architecture LLC in the amount of $3,500 to complete work on the Colonel Summers Gate design project. This increase, combined with the total previous modification, results in an increase greater than 25%, which is why we're here before you today. As you know, voters passed in 2014 the $68 million bond measure to address critical needs without increasing the tax rates. The bond funding goes towards parks' most urgent needs in 7 repair priority areas, including playgrounds, trails and bridges, pools, facilities to protect workers, Pioneer Courthouse Square, accessibility, restrooms, and other urgent safety improvements. The Colonel Summers Park project, its purpose is to provide safe and accessible access to park restroom facilities. The existing Colonel Summer restrooms are not performing as desired due to an increase in age and also accessibility impediments. The present restroom facilities are also insufficient and are often supplemented with temporary restrooms. So today, I'm here to talk about the Colonel Summers Park project. It has 2 different facets to it. The improvements will provide a new accessible Portland Zoo to supplement the existing inaccessible restrooms. It will remove other identified ADA barriers. This is about 40% of the accessibility barriers that were identified in the ADA transition plan we'll be addressing with this project. We're going to be providing new accessible splash pad for the people in the area. We're also providing decorative gates which will improve safety. This project, as the commissioner said, is funded by both bond funding, which pays for the loo and the ADA pathway improvements, and also system development charges, which are paying for the splash pad and the decorative gates for the pavilion. On the slide before you, you can see in a little more detail, the red circle shows the location of the splash pad. The yellow shows the 4,300 square feet of barrier-free pathways that we're putting in. And it's important because this project fulfills a commitment that we made to the Buckman neighborhood to address some of the chronic issues that were occurring in that area. We've had many meetings with both the Buckman neighborhood, the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, social service providers, and others, and have came to a plan for the improvements that we're doing to date. This slide shows what the gates look like, which are really beautiful decorative security gates that will be going into the pavilion. And this is a feature that was contracted and designed by Dow Architecture, which is a minority-owned, women-owned firm. The second part of our council request is to ask for approval for an increase to the current contract amount by $3,500. The increase combined, as I said, with the previous contract modification is 36% greater than the 25% requested. The original contract amount was $26,665. The revised contract amount is $36,275. The increase in cost was primarily because when we went out to bid the first time, we didn't get any bidders, and we had to do more outreach and go out to several metal fabricators to get the bids. We got 3 bids. Those gates will be installed in the spring of 2016, and the other improvements we will have by mid-2017. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Questions? All right, anyone here to speak on those 2 items? If not, again, they will carry over to tomorrow. 1286 and 1287 will carry over tomorrow for action by the council. And then 1288, we've already read. Anything further on that one?
Well, let me
you got different staff here to talk about that one.
Yes, we do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so this is the one that we discussed a little bit in the budget, the 4 bump process. We've been working for a while to work with the Housing Bureau to transfer this property from Portland Parks and Recreation to the Housing Bureau for development of affordable housing. We're going more into that. It then directs the $1.2 million into the Parks Memorial Fund, which I had been hoping to allocate to more park improvements in East Portland, but instead it's been, council decided to allocate it to make the match for the FEMA grants. This is Elaine Nunn to make our presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. I'll just give you a little background and then turn it over to Kurt, who can talk a little bit about the future plans for the site. So the Mount Tabor Annex, which is located at Southeast 60th and Stark, was acquired by the city in 1979. And since about 1994, it's been used by the YMCA to run a child care center. The building, however, was built in 1918, and it's definitely quickly nearing the end of its useful life and needs a lot of maintenance that's making it expensive to maintain. So in 2015, Parks, following the city's disposition policy, determined that we no longer needed this for our own needs, and so we were going to go through the disposition policy and offer it up to other bureaus. It turns out that when Housing Bureau found out that we were no longer needed it, that they thought it would be a great place for affordable housing, and so we have been working with the Housing Bureau for the past several months to work out a way to transfer it. So I want to thank Kurt Krieger and Carl Dinkelspiel, as well as Dennis, James, and Parks for their hard work on making this transfer happen. So I will turn it over to you.
Members of council, Kurt Krieger, Housing Bureau. This is a wonderful site for affordable housing. Southeast 60th and Stark, as you may know, has a little bit of a jog on 60th. And we'll have to work with PBOT on sort of a right-of-way taper, perhaps, to help correct some throughput issues on 60th. I know that Leah Treat looked specifically at something much bigger in that area and decided that it really didn't fit in their budget. We're also mindful that this is an important community institution and that we want to make sure that it is a seamless provision of child care services by the YMCA. Their Y-Cares program has been quite successful there. So what we've been talking about is procuring a new developer to co-develop approximately 40, possibly as many as 50 housing units with between 5,000 and 8,000 square feet of childcare space in a new facility. So the Y would be embedded in that program, and whomever we procure for the development would be so retained with that understanding. So we think it's a win for the neighborhood because it can be a continuous level of service. We think it's also an opportunity to help provide some more social equity in the Mount Tabor community that by itself is not all that affordable. I'd be happy to answer any questions for you, but we do envision this not being targeted to extremely low-income people, probably something developed with low-income housing tax credits. The income spectrum for that population is up to 60% of the area median income. And we'll want to obviously work with the neighborhood on the physical design of the property, ensuring that, their concerns are satisfied.
And remind me, this is a property north or south of Stark?
This is on the southwest corner
So that's
of
where
the
the old,
intersection.
so does the old building get retained? Does it, what happens?
Probably not. It's an unreinforced masonry building, and hopefully we can move quickly enough that it doesn't have to be reinforced.
Yeah.
I've actually talked with staff about whether or not there's any design elements of the old building that could perhaps be integrated, because it does have kind of a neat facade, but the building itself can't really be retained.
Understood. Can't save them all.
Yeah, it's a tough one, yeah.
Yeah. Questions? Other questions? Well, thank you both very much. We'll see if there's anyone else who wants to speak about this. If not, it will also move to tomorrow for action.
Just thank Director Michael Barte as well for being very involved in this.
You're watching over us to make sure we do it right. 1289, please.
1289, authorize a contract and provide payment for the construction of the Sandy River Engineered Log Jam Placement Project at an estimated cost of $2.3 million.
Okay, so we got certified as a salmon-safe city, and this is part of that because the Water Bureau's been working since 2010 on salmon restoration in the Sandy Basin, doing the right thing, and also meeting regulatory obligations. And Mike Storer and Steve Kuchis are here to talk about this project. Normally, governments don't actually create log jams. We're trying to get rid of them, but in this case, it makes sense. Welcome.
So yesterday, good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Yesterday, we had the Salmon Safe people visit our staff meeting.
Right.
And this is among the more cooler plaques that we,
Yes.
that we have.
Yes.
It would look good
Yeah.
sitting right up there. So as far as our benefactors know, we are the first salmon-safe water utility in the country. This applies to our activities in the city. They decided that since the Endangered Species Act and all were active up in the watershed, it doesn't apply up there. But we're very proud of this, trying to figure out a good place to put it. What we're here today to talk about is one of our HCP programs, Habitat Conservation Plan programs, and I'm joined at the table by Steve Kuchis. He's our fisheries biologist and the project managers for these programs. The Habitat Conservation Plan is extremely important to us. It provides regulatory certainty for the future. If we didn't have a Habitat Conservation Plan, every single identifiable project that we do up in the watershed to operate the water system might be subject to NEPA documentation and so on, and it would be both expensive and time-consuming. So I think this was a very wise thing that was done, led by our resource protection folks. Most of the habitat measures in the plan are kind of done in the front of the program so that we can make sure that they work, and we have to complete most of them by 2024. Since 2010, when we started executing this program, we've done 9 measures in the Bull Run, including minimum flow levels in the Bull Run River. It's very complicated to do releases from the dams for power and for water use because we have requirements to meet downstream. We've put fish passage on Walker Creek culvert, one of those big culverts that fish can swim through, salmon. And we actually have a picture of a salmon swimming upstream not too long after we opened it. We do water temperature control in the Bull Run River, and part of that was the Dam 2 tower improvements. We also, as part of this conservation plan, work in the Sandy River Basin to enhance overall fisheries. We've done 7 different measures there, including conservation easements, 4 habitat conservation measures for placement of large wood structures, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit today. We've completed a fish ladder on Alder Creek. We've worked with the Corps of Engineers to remove the Sandy River Delta Dam. And we have continued to fund what's called the Habitat Fund. It's a $9 million fund used over several years with some of our partners up in the watershed area to do habitat projects. The specific project at hand, as has been stated already, is a $2.3 million, basically a log jam to create habitat and for salmon and steelhead that are covered under the Endangered Species Act. The price, $2.3 million. The total project cost is $3 million, so it's about $700,000 for design, contingency, and so on and so forth. And what I thought I would do was let Steve show you one of these projects. They're not only interesting, but the way that they're done is really interesting. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon. I'm not sure what time it is. I'm Steve Kutches with the Water Bureau. What we have on the screen first is you want to know where the project is. We're trying to do this project at two locations on the main stem Sandy River. One's at Diabney State Park and one's at Oxbow Regional Park. So we're working with a very big system. This is one of these engineered log jams in construction. What you don't see down below, if you can imagine a series of about 15 to 20 tree trunks that are about 40 feet long and a big root wad at the bottom. The root wad being at the very bottom of that. They're standing straight up, and that's the structure skeleton, if you would, but we excavate down almost 30 feet to build these things. Then, if you could imagine a big tinker toy type of project where the other logs are linked together, actually pinned to this structure, and then ballast is added to those, and we build those in layers all the way up. And at the very end here, I only have 4 pictures. I'll show you a final looking structure. These are truly engineered log jams. We're putting those in the floodplain of the Sandy River. They're designed to withstand 100-year floods. A lot of design and consideration and forces go into these things. So you may ask, well, how does this help fish? These structures are just in the floodplain, and what they're trying to do is make water go sideways. They're trying to take a little bit of the Sandy River flow in the wintertime to activate historic side channels. And that's where the fish, the little guys, need to go to get out of the high velocities in the winter. So this is creating habitat that's lacking out there for fish like Chinook salmon, coho salmon, and steelhead, all that are listed under the Endangered Species Act list. And so that's the focus for the habitat improvements. So the structures actually create the habitat they need. So that's it in its simple form. These structures could be, as you look down on them, 60 by 90 feet in dimension. They're quite large. We do fly materials in sometimes with double propellered helicopters. It's an easy way to get things there very quickly. And then lastly, we want these things to look as natural as they can be. They're designed to accumulate other wood and to become obstructions. And again, you can see how the channel moves around with these things in place. And these are some finished engineered log jams at some other locations. So that is pretty much what I wanted to describe. And to respect your time, that's what they look like.
So 2 questions I have. One is that the Sandy River has not been channelized or, heavily screwed up by human intervention, in the way some rivers have. So why do we need to create log jams? Why isn't the river creating its own?
Well, Mayor Hills, it's been partially screwed up.
Okay.
When we had the 1964 flood, the Corps of Engineers and the current thinking of the time, they actually channelized a tremendous part of it. So they took out a lot of the habitat complexity and they cut off a lot of these side channels that used to be at play at the Sandy. And this is an attempt to try to get a lot of that back.
Okay. And the second question, and you can sort of see the question in the background because there's a boat over there. So this is a very popular recreational river. I assume we're placing these in a way that is not going to create a safety hazard for a river where there are already a lot of drownings and there's a huge amount of recreational use.
Yes, sir. And we're working very closely with those 2 parks where we're planning to put these projects. This is not a picture on the Sandy. Where we're working is out of the most of the boat traffic. And so we deliberately chose those locations with that in mind.
Yeah, so you're working with the Marine Board or somebody to help figure that out.
Yeah, a very serious consideration for boating safety and the other recreationists out there.
Yeah, having been swept under a log once when I was canoeing on the Molalla River, I know that there's a danger there.
a serious concern. We actually, in the lower Bull Run, had a fatality from a kayaker for the same reason.
It's so how you do this and where you do it really matters for those folks.
Yes, it does.
Other questions?
One other comment to share. This is a bid construction project, so the 20% of total bid amount goes to disadvantaged minority, women-owned, and emerging small businesses, and 14% of that is dedicated to disadvantaged minority and women-owned businesses. Suppliers in those categories can also contribute to the construction goal. That concludes our presentation. If you have any more questions.
I don't have any more. You have any more questions? Thank you both very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? If not, it will pass to second reading next week. And
Mayor, Director Abate is asked to hear the presentation for 1283.
Oh, is that
the
in?
footbridge over Burnside.
Thank
you. Oh, good. Yes,
They're
please.
here now.
Oh.
All right, let's do that then, please. Let's return to item 1283 and hear from the Bureau and partners.
You guys want to just come on up here now.
Welcome.
Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. Sorry we're late or early or whatever we are. We're here now. I'm Dan Layden, Capital Program Manager for the Bureau of Transportation. The ordinance before you today authorizes the Bureau to provide $500,000 to the Portland Parks Foundation for the footbridge over Burnside project. The project will provide a bridge for the Wildwood Trail over West Burnside. Currently, when you use the trail, you have to descend down to West Burnside and cross at a fairly difficult location in order to get across West Burnside. This will improve the safety of the trail and the safety of the road. The project is a partnership with significant private financing, and PBOT is excited to see the project move forward and provide a last-end contribution to the project. Jeff Anderson from Portland Parks Foundation and Mike Abate, the Director of Portland Parks, are here to talk a little bit more about the project, and we'll be short and sweet.
Great, welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Mike Abate, Director of Portland Parks and Recreation. Just to say that this is an incredible project that has been on our CIP list of unfunded projects for many years, at least since 2008. It is part of the regional trail system, so in terms of benefits to all Portlanders, this extends our trails. And as you know, building trails is one of the most difficult goals to achieve that was laid out in our 2020 vision. So this is a very significant project. We're so grateful for the Parks Foundation to bring it to us and say, hey, could we help with this? And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Anderson, the Executive Director.
Thanks, Mike. Well, good afternoon, Mayor Hales and Commissioners. So I am Jeff Anderson, Executive Director of the Portland Parks Foundation. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you a little bit about the footbridge. I think all of you have been briefed from time to time about our progress, and I'll skip some of what I was going to say, given that you all have taken some action on this already. But I would just reiterate that this is really kind of a locally driven project. Several years ago, neighborhood leaders approached the Parks Foundation to be a part of it, and the steering committee at that time researched various options for trying to remedy the safety issue there and concluded that a permanent footbridge, elegantly designed, was the best long-term solution, perhaps a little more expensive up front, but better in the long run for the city and for the users of the trail. Just to briefly recap what's happened in terms of fundraising, the commitment of $500,000 last year by City Council has really been a galvanizing commitment. And it's already leveraged more than $1.3 million in private contributions, as well as $100,000 from Metro. And we're working hard to raise the balance. So it's a terrific example, I think, of city funds inspiring private contributions to put together a public asset like this. And I would say when people have heard the city has weighed in that way, they're very, very appreciative. So we're working to complete the fundraising. We anticipate a crowdfunding campaign in 2017 so that people in the area will have a chance to give in small amounts and increase the breadth of public buy-in. And we're looking forward to working closely with the transportation and parks teams, already beginning to do some of that project implementation. Our goal is to keep the burden on city staff to a minimum and deliver a great turnkey project to the city, hopefully sometime in 2018. So with that, I just say again, thanks to the staff and to you all for the commitment you've shown to this, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And Kim Knox from our project management firm, Shields Obletz Johnson, is also here in case people have questions.
Questions, comments?
No question, but I just wanted to say I'm so glad you came over here before we adjourned, because I thought that it was totally inadequate for us to pass on this project by just saying we're really excited about it, which is what I did 20 minutes ago. This is a fantastic public-private collaboration and a critically important project, and I wish you well, Jeff, raising the remainder of the money, but you've already gone a long way. This is just fantastic.
Yeah, I appreciate the partnership between the bureaus and the Parks Foundation, which is exactly what the community had in mind when the Parks Foundation was created. So this is the kind of leverage that we hoped that we would get, and that Barbara Walker in particular would have loved to have seen.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate you. This is a great way to end our morning session, so thank you.
Thanks.
Great work. Okay, so we're going to recess until 2 p.m. and we'll be at it for a while.